from the members. And then from there, if there are two nominations, it means the two people that have been nominated will be put to a vote. The person with the majority vote will be duly be elected the chairperson, the acting chairperson, I'm sorry. If it's only one nomination, it means that person will be duly elected the acting chairperson. Could I request a nomination from the floor?
Bra Eddie?
Yes, Ms. Lekwase.
It's Ms. Lekwase. I nominate Mr. Chabani, Honorable Chabani, to be the acting chairperson of the meeting.
Mr. Chabani has been nominated to be the acting chairperson. Is there any seconder?
Eddie, it's Honorable Brandon Pele. I second that.
The motion has been seconded. Any other nomination? It appears that there's no other nomination. So Mr. Chabani has been duly elected the acting chairperson. I'll hand over to him now to run with the program. Thanks. Bye.
Morning, honorable members. Thanks very much for the opportunity to preside over the portfolio committee meeting. As we've noted that the chairperson, Advocate Bongo, has not submitted an apology of attending today. We greet all honorable members present here today, Minister, the DM, the DG, and the staff of Department of Home Affairs, the chairperson of the IEC, and other commissioners present here, and the CEO and other executive of the IEC, the acting CEO of Government Printing Works, and all officials of all the departments attending this meeting. We'll request that Eddie and the team flag the agenda so that we go through quickly.
Are you able to see it, Chairperson? Hi, Chairperson?
Yes.
Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Eddie. The agenda is as presented and communicated to all the stakeholders, including members of honorable members, to this portfolio committee today. We're going to be running on tight time because two stakeholders, Government Printing Works, the IEC, and the minister has to reflect, particularly the IEC and Government Printing Works, are going to present their APP and are going to perhaps ask all of us to adhere to the time allocated so that we give enough time for members and yourselves who presented time to interact with your presentation. But I was cautioned that because of the two presentations, the two entities of the Department of Home Affairs, IEC and Government Printing Works, a pandemic. Mr. Matonsi, I'm going to draw you to the item number 3 so that we run on the apologies of members of honorable members, and we'll go to the minister, and the minister will indicate any apologies, and we'll go to the chairperson of the IEC, and then we'll go to the acting CEO. In that spirit, on the apologies, the minister, the chair, and the acting CEO are requested to introduce the team that they are attending this meeting with. Mr. Matonsi.
Thanks, Chairperson. I've got 3 apologies. One, of course, is from Advocate Bongo. The other one is from Ms. van der Merwe. She said she's attending PC on social development at the same time. From there, she's going to attend the memorial service of the Queen. Then the last one is Mr. Adam Salmon. He realized that no, he has got a doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock. So those are the 3 apologies that I received.
Thank you, Mr. Matonsi. Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll hand over to the DG to read any apologies and the CEO of Government Printing Works. Thank you. From my side, I don't have any.
And also introduction. Thank you. DG.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the honorable members. From our side, the team includes the team from the Government Printing Works, and they are led by the acting CEO, Mayor Alina Fosi. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson Mashinini.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Our delegation is led by myself, the Chair, together with the Vice Chair, Madam Love, and Commissioner Mepa is attending some other matters, and the Dr. Masugu may be joining us and the judge, but the delegation is comprised of myself and the Vice Chair, together with the CEO and the CFO, CEO Mr. Mamabulu, and CFO Madam Bata, with our technical team, Mr. Kelembe and Mr. Cranelli, and as well as the deputy CEOs, Mr. Mosri and I think Mr. Shibori and Madam Akteri and Mr. Mahlangu, the CE. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson Mashinini. I'm assuming that the acting CEO of Government Printing Works, the DG, has already indicated the delegation. When we're done with the IEC on the responses and the presentation and interaction on the reports, the Chairperson, you'll be allowed we're not chasing you, you'll be allowed once you are done with the item to be released with your team. But if you still have to remain, you also are allowed. Or just indicate that point so that we don't repeat it once you are done and we're moving to a second item. I'm going to invite the IEC through you, Chairperson, to present. As I indicated, we're going to be on time. Documents have been sent to members. Members have interacted with them. Chairperson Mashinin.
Honorable Acting Chair, Mr. Chabane, the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Mzwaledi, the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Nzuza, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee present, the Director General and the officials of the Department of Home Affairs, Mr. Makode, the Acting Chief Executive Officer for Government and Printing Works, Madam Fosi, and distinguished guests. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity once again that has been provided for the Commission to be in a position to brief the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs with respect to our 2021 to 2022 budget and annual performance plans. On behalf of the Commission, allow me, Chairperson, to make some brief high-level and strategic comments and remarks regarding the budget that is before you, so it can give you a backdrop and a background of the thinking of the Commission in arriving at this budget. And then, as you've pointed out, Chairperson, the documents had been circulated. So I'm hoping then the CEO and the Chief Financial Officer would then take the committee through the budget as quick as it is possible. And Chairperson, I would like then to move straight into the budget overview. As already indicated, this budget is for the year 2021 to 2022. It is, in fact, an election budget because it includes the key financial resources and the quantum required to deliver the 5th local government election of this country in later part of the year, as already been announced by the President. Usually, honorable members, the costs of elections are spread over at least 2 or more years, financial years. And in that, the budget would also include 2 registration weekends and 1 registration weekend happening very often in a year prior to the elections. However, we are now living under abnormal conditions, which is the pandemic. And the pandemic, we all know that it has had an impact, not only in terms of to lives in our country, but the pandemic has also resulted in what we call fiscus challenges for the country. And as such, we have not been isolated. Major activities that relate to elections have also had to be adapted and customized to the conditions that we are facing. And so our budget now has been compressed into a single financial year. And for this reason, then the budget contains a very significant rollover from the previous year to the amount that's approximately about 1.3 billion rands. And this rollover has still to be ratified by the National Treasury, although we take comfort in the sense that the process of engagement with the Treasury have already been what we call undertaken, and things have been outlined and agreed with the Treasury in this particular regard. So there's nothing to be alarmed about. It's just that it's a question of the timing. Honorable members, if we look at the budget, we will all see that almost 2/3, about 70% of this year's budget comprises 3 primary cost centers, which is our cost drivers and expenses. The first of these is that we have entered a new acquisition of a new technology and a new generation that revolutionizes the management of the voters' roll, including instant voter registration and address capture, as well as live tracking of voter participation on election days. We all know that our devices, the zip, were not able to be integrated, and now we've moved into the new generation of technology that links every voting station, like your ATM would. If you go to one ATM, you can't jump to another and try and withdraw when you've already exceeded your amount. Those things are now integrated, and this is where we are. And this once-off investment will actually significantly enhance the integrity and close the loopholes that we have faced in previous elections. And the tune of this came to close to about 627 million, almost 31% of this year's budget. And the second component of the budget of cost center is the investment that we have to put in making sure we have adequate temporary staff to serve as registration, voting and counting officials, and at the 23,000 voting stations around the country. And for registration, approximately 58,000 officials are recruited and trained for that event. And then subsequently, we will then have about 207,000 personnel that then are recruited for the voting day. And if you look at that cost, it's $500 million goes to actually the personnel required to conduct the election in our country, and that constitutes about 27% of the budget. And then lastly, the third cost center is, of course, the procurement of all electoral materials and the logistics and storage requirements then that we have to fulfill. And that takes close to about 200 million, which is about 196, and that makes about 10% of our budget. Honorable members, we also remind you to know that this budget does take into account the significant reductions that were necessitated by us to respond to budgetary cuts that had to be made due to the continued COVID impact on the economy and the treasury and the fiscus of the country. And to accommodate some of those shortfalls in our requirements, the Commission had to unfortunately only provide for one registration weekend, as opposed to what we normally would do, which is 2. And we are, however, saying there would be ongoing registration, because we do have municipal offices that should all encourage people to go and register, and not only to just wait for the registration weekend. And with regard to that, the Commission is currently in the process of concluding its consultations with the key stakeholders, including the political parties, on the final dates for this national registration weekend. And we hope at least early next week, we should be able to then make the necessary announcements. And we also, as a Commission, feel we should share with you that that considerable investments have been undertaken over the time to help reduce the costs and bring in efficiencies, as well as to expand the accessibility of the Commission's activities as far as elections are concerned. And the largest and most significant of these is, as I pointed out earlier, is the investment in the new generation of voter management devices. I am pleased, as we had indicated to the Portfolio Committee before, and I'm pleased to inform the honorable members that the Commission has finalized all the necessary procurement requirements, and we are expecting the delivery of the device later this month. And the remainder of the balance of what we should be receiving would be in time for elections. This will enable us that we would utilize the technology and have it as a dry run in our registration period. And these devices will be a technological leap forward for the management of the voters' roll and for ensuring the integrity of the participation in the elections. There's also other significant investment in that we've made in technology for these upcoming elections. Among them is the introduction of e-recruitment and e-learning for elections officials. Now, this is a fundamental and significant adaptation to the COVID challenge that we have, that we are now bringing a greater capability for us to conduct the recruitment as well as the training without necessarily having too much physical contact by using technology. We further revamped our website to enhance access to information for all the stakeholders, as the inputs had been made during the PLCs when we do the reviews of previous elections. We've also brought in a new dashboard which keeps track of as a program project management tool that enables us to keep track of all critical election timeline and processes at the touch of a button. We've also moved into enhancement of the online candidate nomination system used successfully by political parties, that had tried this in the previous 2 general elections. So we are upping the game in that capability. And we hope that all candidate nominations will be done now electronically. And honorable members, despite these fiscal austerity constraints, the Commission has managed to provide a balanced budget that it believes will not compromise the elections. I think it's important that we emphasize that having pointed out those constraints that we faced, we are also not saying that the election is actually compromised. We will be able to deliver the election with the resources and the savings that we've identified. However, there's still one area that we still, what is outstanding, which was unfunded requirement, which is the COVID. As we all know, MTF is over 2 or 3 years. Now, we could not have predicted the requirements for the COVID protocols. So we are in negotiation with the Treasury to see if expropriation adjustments later in the year could not be made to accommodate the COVID requirements. And this will enable us to be able to cover, in particular, the voting day requirements. But up until now, we've been able to make those provisions. In conclusion, honorable members, in addition to the budget, we are pleased to table our amended annual performance plan for the year, which takes into account the impact of the COVID on our operations. And among the amendments, they include the reduction in terms of the public meetings, the face-to-face voter education event and other activities. However, we are upping the ante in terms of the electronic and social media and other platforms to be able to mobilize and engage with our stakeholders. With these few remarks, honorable members, allow me to then invite the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Mamabulo, to then take us to the details of the budget together with his CFO, Madam Mbata. Chairperson, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Let's also, I think the CEO is aware of the time allocated so that we work within that allocated time, Chairperson Mashine. I just want to caution him and the CFO when they come. Thank you, CEO.
So thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to the Minister, Deputy Minister, Commissioner Mashinini, Chairperson, Commissioner Love, my colleagues, the DG. I'm conscious of the time, Chair, and I'll try to really run through the presentation. That is the outline of our presentation. We have taken into account the following factors in the development of the budget as well as the annual performance plan. This, of course, is a result of an internal consultative process which involved our local staff, our provincial staff, staff at head office, as well as members of the Commission. We've also have taken account of the NDP and the requirements of integrated planning, which are called for within the public sector. The revised framework for strategic plans. We've done an environmental analysis which pointed to the need for innovation to take advantage of products of a digital nature, which will hopefully impact positively on electoral democracy. We've noted the increasing litigation within the electoral sphere, as well as the economic and fiscal climate in the Republic, which has necessitated budget reductions. So all those factors have been taken account. We've also looked at our own imperatives, as well as the need to deal with current and future challenges, which yes.
Yeah, we request that you can put your presentation on the Eddie.
Okay, I thought it's showing on my side. Let me redo it.
Thank you, CEO.
Mama Bolo, if you can just put it on the slide mode.
Slide mode, yeah. Thank you, CEO. You can continue.
Okay, thanks. Okay, now in terms of the distribution of costs for registration and elections, here is the breakdown. The voter management devices are going to consume 31% of election and registration costs, followed by electoral and expansion staff at 27%. And then comes the voter education events, as well as communication and media. Then registration and voters' roll maintenance. Registration and voting material, which includes your logistics and warehousing. Now, that's the distribution of the election and registration costs, giving us just under 2 billion for the plans that we've put in place for this year's election. The voter management devices, obviously, it's not an annual or election by election cost. It's an investment over 7 years. So this equipment will be used for several elections, as well as in by-elections. It's not an election by election budget requirement. It's an investment for a period. Now, if we go into the programs, we are presenting 4 programs, the first of which is our administration, which really provides the overall strategic management of the Commission, as well as centralized support and financial management services. Basically, in this program, that's where we deal with our corporate functions, and we provide effective business processes in this program. The first issue here is the management of risk, and here we're dealing with the reviews that are required of our strategic risk register within 30 days after the start of the next quarter. So every quarter, we have a target of 4 reviews in a year. And then we are a highly IT-intensive institution. As a result, there's a need to maintain network stability. So we have a minimum annual percentage network and application systems availability, which is measured in hours. We are planning to maintain a 97% availability, averaged in a year, calculated in terms of hours, so that there are no business interruptions. And then the next is the number of permanent staff filled per annum. We are providing for 90% of the staff establishment of 1,113. Next is our pursuit for a clean audit. We believe that this is the strategic necessity for the institution, because the clean audit speaks to the quality of the governance of the institution. It speaks to our adherence to regulatory frameworks pertaining to public expenditure, but it also speaks to the ethical conduct overall of our staff, of managers, and indeed of those who are in executive positions. So we believe that we need to pursue a clean audit, and that we have put in the APP to indicate our seriousness about that endeavor. So that's the totality of the corporate business management process in Program 1. Program 2 deals with the core business of the institution, which is electoral operations. And here we are striving for excellence at the voting station. We're striving for accessibility and suitability of voting facilities, managing of election results, and maximizing electoral justice. We did indicate that we are operating in an increasingly litigious environment. So it's important that we maximize benefits of electoral justice so that all participants in the electoral process can vindicate their rights in appropriate fora created in terms of our prescripts. Compiling and enhancing the credibility of the voters' role, ensuring the election of representatives to ensure that our political system functions as it should, and then continuously improving the legislative framework. In this regard, Chair, we want to test ourselves on the number of election results set aside, and the target, Chair, has to be of necessity 0, that none of the elections that we conduct should be found wanting to extend that courts may deem it apposite to set them aside. And then the number of registered voters, it's an important thing. It speaks to the level of political engagement by our citizens in the electoral process. So we're setting for this current financial year, Chair, the target at 26 million. And then we move on to Program 3. Program 3 deals with outreach, in other words, the engagement with the citizenry. The first here is the number of research initiatives per annum. We're targeting 2 in this financial year. These are research projects either related to voter participation, the attitudes of voters, and so on. And we share that with political parties so as to inform their own campaign strategies. And again, we're looking at voter satisfaction. In other words, on election day, we commission a research institute to talk to voters, what worked well, what didn't work well, do they perceive the process to be free and fair? Because out of those research findings, we are able to make qualitative improvements for the next set of elections. The number of thought leadership interactions per year, these are seminars where we explore electoral matters, papers delivered, and those types of things. We are planning for this year 10 thought leadership interactions. Now, this is an omnibus of a target, so to speak. It relates to our digital media, broadcast media, as well as out-of-home advertisements. In this year, Chair, we are looking at a total media impressions of 35 million. And then it's broken down into a number of components. Twitter, we aim to reach 2 million, on YouTube, 2 million, SMSs, 2 million, please call me, 150 million, the viewership on television, 6 million, and radio, 5 million, and print 6 million. And we plan out of home 150 billboards and 180,000 street pole posters, and then 2,000 transit TV screens, and those types of things. So in this target share, it houses our communication campaign. So it will be varied. It will embrace all those components. Of course, there'll be an increasing bias towards social media, because increasingly people converse on social media platforms. So there's going to be an increasing use of that. But your traditional media is not going to be forgotten. It still forms the bedrock of our communication campaign. The Commission will launch the election at a point which they'll announce, and with that will come the new creative strategy that is going to underpin that communication strategy. And the logo and all those types of things that goes with the communication campaign will be launched at the date that the Commission will announce, but certainly before the registration weekend. And then the last program, it's a new program, important because of its strategic nature to electoral democracy in the country. And in this, we're trying to manage compliance with legislation, which is an important component, and to strengthen cooperation with political parties, and provide for license systems as well with parties registered and unregistered. So it's a new target where we talk about the number of disbursements to represented parties, which is once per quarter, and number of license sessions held with stakeholders and potential contributors to the multi-party democracy. We're planning on 10. That's the APP in high-level terms. Then we can, the Chief Financial Officer will quickly run through the figures. Thanks.
Thank you, CEO. I'm just mindful of time, so I'll go through it swiftly. I think the greetings have been made, so if we can then start on the presentation. If we can go to slide number 25, this gives you an overview of what is sitting over the MTN period. I think it's always important to get a global view. You'll have a look at the current year that is under discussion, 21-22. We're sitting at 2.3 billion. We have discussed what makes up the election cost when the chairperson, the CEO, discussed it. What is sitting now under administration is 765 million. 1.3 billion is sitting under electoral operation. Outreach is sitting at 201 million, and then 22 million then goes towards party funding. And that gives us in total 2.3 billion for 21-22. The next slide shows you graphically all the 3 years and just a comparison of the different programs. As you can see, we can move to the next slide. The next slide then shows you the cuts that we've had to absorb. So if you look at 21-22, we've got 174 million, 248 million the subsequent year, and then 23-24, we've got 240 million that we've had to been cut by National Treasury. That gives us a total 663 million that has been cut from our budget over the last 3 years that are coming up. If we then move, we just have now done a detailed analysis what these cuts are going to translate to. If we look at number one, this is program number one talks to administration. First of all, we haven't been able to implement the review, and we're only currently sitting, the organizational review, we're currently sitting at 90% of the funded post. Secondly, we've also had to cut down on the training of staff. This is permanent staff. We've also had our funds reduced for the project which we wanted to do, which is procuring of a permanent home. So those funds have been reduced. If I move on, this is program number two, the electoral operation. First cut impact was the second registration weekend. That is no longer possible because it's not funded. Secondly, the appointment and funding of electoral staff. I wanted to note that the last time we actually were able to increase the rates of the staff was in 2016. We haven't been able to increase those rates to inflation adjustment. We also have had to reduce the period in which they come in by a month due to the cuts. If we then move on, e-voting, this is important. This is not the VMD. This is e-voting, completely different device. We are still would like to do the piloting. This is going to help us in terms of reducing the cost of elections and just creating efficiency within our operation. But this still remains unfunded. If I then move on again, program number 3, this is our outreach program. Once again, with appointment and funding for municipal outreach coordinators and democracy education field workers, those rates we could not increase. So we'd be sitting at a rate that was paid in 2016. It has not been adjusted for inflation. We have also had to cut down the term and the period by a month that these field workers come in. Also, as a result of the cut, is that the reduced budgets are also affecting our ability as an organization to fully fund some of the initiative to actively and promote and foster awareness in the participation of the electoral process. If I then move to number 4, this is the political parties. This is program 4. What we've done, we've been very conservative about how we capacitate this unit based on the funding. So we haven't really capacitated much. We followed a very conservative approach. Then also RPPF, this is something you all know about. They also have experienced cuts. You'll see that over the MTF, it totals to a cut of 32 million that the fund has had to absorb. If I then move to the next slide, this is the additional funding pressures. COVID was not planned. We're also not too sure what the impact of COVID is. No one can really say, but the impact of COVID has been as followed. If we look at program number 1, we've actually had pressure over the MTF, and these are the related costs that we've incurred. So there was procurement of PPE. We had deep cleaning of offices. We had testing of staff at the start, at the end of the COVID, not the end of the COVID period, but when staff came back the first time round. We also had to provide remote capabilities to our staff members so that they're able to work at home. This is applicable to 272 offices and 1,000 employees. If I then look at program number 2, this also has a significant financial impact. Just like the chair said, the nature of the work that we do interfaces a lot with people, so the need for PPE here is very high. We are currently liaising with National Treasury in terms of getting the additional resources, and this is going to be done through the adjustment and estimate process for 2021. If I look at program 3, again, this has changed the way in which we do program 3, also very human interaction. We need to go the digital route and find different platforms in order to deliver on program 3. Number 4, if I look at the last one, we've also had recently a constitutional court judgment, just saying that the Electoral Act is unconstitutional. This judgment comes with cost. But what we've currently assessed the cost as, and not limited to the list below in terms of implementing this judgment, is that there'll be rewriting of ICT business application, namely the candidate nomination system, the logistic information system, results system. Secondly, there'll need to be retraining of staff, and then the possible redelimitation of voting districts and the possible reconfiguration of local offices. That's about closes off then my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Mashinini and the CEO, Mr. Mamabolo, the CFO, for detailed brief on your APP and financial position. I'm going to invite honorable members to comment, questions, and interact with the presentation. And I think now that gives us the time to clarify certain areas where members will need to be clarified and comment on areas that will be appreciated on the APP presentation. We're going to invite Honorable Lekhwase, Honorable Tito, Honorable Roos, Honorable Molekwa, Honorable Mcini, Honorable Pillay, Veteran Lokuta, and Honorable Mudise. In that order, so that we interact with the presentation of IEC. Honorable Lekhwase.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start by greeting all of us on this platform and welcome the presentation done by both the CEO and the CFO. And honestly speaking, I want to applaud the IEC for doing their best in trying and working towards obtaining a clean audit outcome. It really means a lot, and it shows that you are putting more effort and you're taking your work seriously. I do not have much, Chair, to say, but I have two questions that maybe I need clarity on. Previously, we see every time IEC is doing voter education, and year in and year out, you have voters registering for going to vote. Don't you have any other mechanism that you can come with to make sure that every time there are elections, people that have registered goes and votes? Because from election to election, we see a decline in number of voters. Don't we have maybe a strategy to attract voters to go to voting stations on the days of elections? The second one is the question that I would want to know is, does the cutting of training of staff really doing justice to the organization? And then when are we really, or when is the IEC officially going to be piloting the e-voting system? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Lekhwase. Honorable Tito.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to everyone who is present today. Chair, my first question is this one. The IEC should explain in details the budget item depreciation in program 2. What does it mean, and how does this expenditure item increase from 21 million in the previous financial year to 70 million in the current financial year? And also my second question is this one, Chair. The public services has not increased the salary of its employees. Does the IEC plan to increase the salaries? If yes, by what percentage? The other question is, goods and services budget item is reduced by 26% in the year of local government elections. Is this budget decrease not going to negatively impact the preparation of the local government elections, especially the voter education and awareness campaigns in the coming months? And my last question, Chair, is the IEC aware that there were 30 suitcases containing IEC materials found lying alongside the R38 road from Standerton to Betal? The material was found by passerbys, and if they are aware of that matter, did they investigate, and what are the outcomes of the investigation? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Tito. Honorable Roos.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the IEC members for their presentation. And allow me, from the Democratic Alliance's point of view, to wish the IEC the very best for this year. I think it's a very big task that you have on your hands, and we wish you well. Just a few questions, about 4 or 5. I'm very happy to, we are very happy to see the voter management devices hitting the ground. I want to understand, have these actually been procured now? Is training being provided? If you could just give us a bit of a guideline about where we are with the actual implementation of those devices. We also, we had the Home Affairs meeting on Tuesday, and we talk about the 90% vacancies and when vacancies become empty. What is the IEC's policy in terms of filling critical vacancies that might be vacated due to attrition? Is the IEC in a position to fill those, or do those vacancies become unfunded? Then we talk about one registration weekend. I see it's for the 2021 and 2024 elections. And there's talk of a new registration or an online registration platform. If we can just get a brief briefing on the progress on that registration platform. Then there was a regular expenditure of 20 million, and I see that 12 million was condoned. But with the rest of the amount and the causes of that, how is this going to be addressed to achieve a clean audit next time around? And then finally, if we can just get an indication of the specific COVID measures that are being considered around the local government election, and whether there is sufficient budget for this, or whether special budget will need to still be allocated for this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mulekwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me also start by appreciating the presentation made by the IEC. We hope this presentation will be the true reflection, as it's going to help us in making sure that we prepare for the local government election. Chairperson, I just want to emphasize on the issue raised by Honorable Lehuase and Honorable Tito on the delayed appointment of staff by 1 month. I just want to check with the AEC, is this not going to impact negatively on the voter registration awareness, as we are left with only 1 month to voter registration? And I just want to check also with the IEC if there are any mechanism that has been put in place to make sure that major activities like voter registration campaign are not going to be affected by this delay of appointment of staff by only 1 month. The other issue, Chairperson, according to the IEC, only 19,661 males and 24,944 females in the age group of 18 and 19 are registered on the voters roll. In addition to that, only 1.9 million males and 2.3 million females between the age of 20 and 29 are on the voters roll. So I just want to check that what are the measures that IEC are using to measure this numbers. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mqine.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. Mine will be I wanted to ask on there's a new technologies which are being put in this voting management system, and a lot of systems that have been put in by the IC. But I'm just worried about the reduced on the training budget. Is it not a concern? How are you going to make sure that your people are able to embrace this change management? Because we have seen that on the introduction of the registration of the independent, the registration of the candidates, where we found that your local offices are still not aware of it. It nearly created a chaos, but your department, the elections management department headed by Mr. Abrams, did something very well to make sure that they arrest the situation and make sure that the registration is done. But how are you going to make sure that the training of people in terms of the introduction of this new system is done, seeing that your budget for training of people has actually gone down? And my other question will be on the, I thought that maybe, Chair, there will be also a provision made, because there are areas where people want to register to vote in the rural areas and all of that, and the IEC and the municipal offices are very far. I would have thought that maybe on these plans, the IEC will probably make a provision to ensure that maybe there are temporary offices or maybe there's a mobile, IEC offices, so that you are able to cover a wide range, especially in the areas of Tofimvaba, Northern Cape areas. People are crying out there that the IEC offices are very far. So maybe that's a reason why most probably, I can't say that there's a problem in terms of the registration of the young people and all of that, but young people, they say as well, they don't even have money, don't even getting anything, any SASA or, social intervention. So for them to go and register is very hard. So I thought that on your plan, you will have that. And another question will be on the, there's an increase now on the COVID-19 infections. The EFF is bought material already. We are on the full swing. Now, what happens that when you close down, when the country goes to level 3 or level 4, and then the elections get, cancelled? Who's going to pay for that material that we've already purchased now, knowing that the president and you're so supported by yourself that we are going on election on the 27th of October? Who's going to pay for those posters, for those billboards and all of that? So I don't know if there is anything has been thought about on that angle. And then what happens on yourself? Is there any contingency plan with the contracts that you've put in already and signed, and the elections get cancelled? Well, what's going to happen? Are you not going to expose yourself to litigation and all of that? We have, in the past by-elections, we've seen a lot of interference from the SAT2 members as being the presiding officers. And I'm worried that, but it is something that we will take into the NPLC. It's because I see a huge staff budget that will be there. And I hope that maybe your e-recruitment system that you want to put in and your procedures are not going to find a situation where we get into trouble between yourself and the political parties like the EFF in terms of hiring SACTO members who like to interfere with the processes at the voting stations, like what they did in that voting station in Ward 6. So I hope that your e-recruitment and your recruitment strategy will not going to be having one of those things there. The new system, Mhlegas, when are we going to have a look at it? Are we going to have enough time to scrutinize it, looking at the code? Because the new system, you said that you are able to make people register to vote, probably is also going to is going to minimize the double voting. When are we going to have a look at the system and scrutinize it? We don't want to do things on a rush. I mean, you know that we never had any proper access on the zip-zap machines. It's always something of a taboo, something we don't have an access. So when we're going to have a full session and scrutinization and the coding, how is it coded and how does it function, so that we know that it is not tamper-proof and all of that. Now, and also we'd like to know how does this new system is going to work, because when we plan, we must not be an elitist. And we must know that who are our people, majority of our people. So most of our people are staying in areas where there is no, there's no Wi-Fi coverage. So I hope that in the introduction of the systems that you are putting in, you are taking into account that there is no network coverage and all of that. And and me and you know that EFF has been raising problems with the zip-zap machines. Some of them not working and all of that. So, and also, is there going to be any plan that we're going to legislate this thing so that it's not a nice to have system? Because you've invested a lot of money there, like almost $500 million So I think that most probably that thing is supposed to have rules and regulations, in a way that's saying that no voting station will work unless that thing works, because the zip machine was just a nice to have. They've never assisted us on anything. So with this investment that you've done of almost $500 million, should have been actually saying that, it's going to be more carry a weight, so that we know that these elections are actually tamper-proof. You cannot actually tamper them. All right, that's fine, leadership. Thanks for that. I'll stop. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Honorable Mkwini, for the contributions. Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And let me greet all honorable members and officials and everyone that's present in this meeting. Chairperson, I think the first thing I want to start with is, in light of there being only one voter registration weekend that the IEC has mentioned in a plan, what is the IEC's plan in terms of having to register people door to door, if there is? Particularly for those who may be still very skeptical about going to voting stations to register. For example, if they are elderly people, etc., and those with comorbidities. So I'm just asking if they are going to accommodate for having to go and do some kind of door-to-door registration. And then I've heard my fellow colleague and honorable member asking about online registration. Where is that process in light of COVID, in light of many challenges that we face? Perhaps that should have been something that we piloted and roll out. Chairperson, I also want to propose and recommend that the IEC does a full presentation to committee on the e-voting, particularly because if we understand the system now, we can also be able to see where the challenges are and to be able to take that forward. In terms of section 190, subsection 2 of the Constitution, the IEC has a legislative mandate to promote voter education and to promote knowledge of sound and democratic electoral processes. The IEC chairperson has noted a decline in the voter participation from 89.3% in 1999 to 65.34% in 2019. Now this is almost 20% decline in voter participation. The low voter turnout is also noted to be especially among the youth, and the indication has been given that there was inadequate voter education. We welcome the IEC's initiatives to expand this reach on social media and other new media. But given that there have been by-elections, what has the IEC's observations been with regards to youth voter participation? And I think it's important for them to be able to give us some kind of indication. However, we welcome the initiatives, yeah? And can the IEC tell us if the social media awareness campaigns have had any impact yet, particularly on the youth, having to use the by-elections as a yardstick? And then the last one, Chairperson, is that the President has announced the date for local government elections. Holding regular elections and having a multi-party democracy is in accordance with the values of our Constitution. Given that the coronavirus is still with us, what is the IEC's preparedness for the local government elections against the backdrop of this pandemic? In particular, I want to make reference that historically, voters stand in queues and lines outside voting stations. What is the plan in terms of physical and social distancing when it comes to elections? Thank you.
I know that this matter was raised with you earlier.
Thanks very much, Honorable Pillay. Veteran Lokota.
Chairperson, thank you. May I also extend my greetings to all of the members present in this meeting. I have been covered largely with the issues that I was concerned about, and I really don't want to add or repeat what has already been said. I do think that the IEC has done some good efforts from what I can see, given the circumstances of the COVID. But I will wait to see what the responses are to some of these questions that have been covered by the others. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Veteran Lekota. Honorable Modise.
Thank you so much, Chair. Let me also take this opportunity and appreciate the work done by the IEC. It is indeed encouraging and it gives us comfort knowing that you are earnestly taking your work seriously. My two questions, Chair, would be on this. I just want to check with the IEC if has there been research that done which may indicate whether or not there will be a significant drop in the funding available to political parties, since we all know that there is currently an implementation of the Political Party Funding Act. And also, Chair, why has the goods and services budget allocated for party funding shown at 55% annual drop from a 30.4 million to 13.7 million in 2021-22? How will this impact the distribution of funds to the political parties? It is also indicated, Chair, in the APP that the 2020 to 2025 strategic plan targets remain relevant, good, but given the significant disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic, won't there be a need for short and medium-term target revisions? Maybe the department might want to look into that and give short-term revisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members, for your contribution to the presentation. I'm going to invite the chair of the IC, the CEO and the CFO, and I think on their delegations, if there are other executive members or commissioners will want to respond to the comments and questions of members who have raised them. Chairperson Mashine.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the honorable members for the questions that have been put forward to us. I would suggest that the approach will allow the CEO to go through these particular questions, and then the CFO and myself will then sweep in that respect. If the CEO in between invites any of the officers to answer the area, we will continue on those bases. I do have also the Vice Chair in the background. But Chair, looking at the time and the number of questions that we have, one would like to have a guidance in how best can we do justice to this from the Chair. Thank you.
No, the guidance is that the AEC must respond to the issues that have been raised. You'll be guided at when time is not on our side. But this meeting must, that's why we have requested you to run through the presentation so that members have time and yourself to respond. Don't pronounce, Chair, that you're going to sweep, because members may come back again. So you may not stand that statement. Just joking, Chair. Mr. Mamabulo.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'll try to deal with the questions, and I'll ask the CFO to deal with the questions related to budgets, goods and services reduction, and those types of questions that are on the table. Chairperson, the voter education the strategy around voter education has of necessity had to be adjusted so as to minimize the interaction of voters and thus create circumstances where there's no substantial cross transmission of the virus. our program, our voter education program, is going to be largely on radio. Our interactions with the SABC are at an advanced stage to plan the rollout of voter education on radio, as well as with the community radio stations. Furthermore, there'll be a significant proportion of voter education happening via social media channels. They will still retain, through municipal outreach coordinators, capacity to do limited face-to-face intervention, but that won't be the mainstay element of the total campaign. Now, let's come to voter turnout. It is indeed correct and concerning that voter turnout in national and provincial elections is reducing. But the same statement is not true for local government elections. Of course, that does not mean we're going to rest on our laurels. In the last two, 2011 and 2016, we are hovering at 58% turnout. It is our desire, our hope, and we're going to put resources into it via our communication campaign, via our voter education program, to ensure that at least we register an improvement and get into the 60% percentile in terms of turnout, because I think that would be a good statement for local democracy if we're able to achieve that. So there's a very funny inverse relationship between turnout in national provincial election on the one hand and local government on the other hand. And we want to make an improvement on that. Now, if voting, this committee, well, let me say we've noted the request that we address the portfolio committee on the subject of e-voting and what different technologies are available, what are the different options, what have other jurisdictions done. The commission is eager and willing to come before the committee for that broad type of discussion. We had come before the portfolio committee to propose that there be an empowering provision that will enable us to do a pilot in a select number of wards in this election. The committee had almost unanimously expressed the view that that type of step was premature. Rather that we engage some more in terms of the concept. And only when we have found one another on concept can we then proceed to make an enabling provision. So we welcome that opportunity to engage on e-voting concept. Noting, of course, that Treasury has also not funded, because they couldn't have funded an unlegislated mandate. Is currently unfunded. A few years back, and now we're dealing with the salary increases. A few years back, the then commission approved that we can negotiate salary increases in terms of our own bargaining mechanism. Before then, we used to follow the public service bargaining process, and whatever was agreed in the public service bargaining chamber, we will implement. So annually, we then engage with our union inside for a settlement. Negotiations are yet to commence on this year's salary increases, but as the commission, we are preparing our position paper in line with the fiscal allocations that we have. And then we will go into a negotiation accordingly with the union. It is correct, Chair, that a few zip machines were found on the R38 last week after the by-elections. The provincial electoral officer in Mpumalanga has been charged with the responsibility to investigate the matter and table a report. We will follow up on that so that a proper report can be placed on the table. The preliminary findings, though, are that one of our local staff members was negligent in transporting those zip machines. But still, we want a full report on the matter. And once we have that, we should be in a position to see whether there's action that should be taken for negligence. Now, the voter management devices. We've run the procurement process, taking advice from National Treasury throughout the procurement process. We have now signed the contracts with the winning bidder. We have tested the prototypes. We have written the business applications that will be running on the VMDs. Now, the VMDs are going to function on two possibilities. One, where there's broadband at the voting station, they will function live. In other words, there'll be a live interaction and a person will know then and there that they've been accepted onto the roll when they leave the voting station, because we'll be able to verify the age, we'll be able to verify the citizenship, we'll be able to verify whether the person is in the right ward based on the address that's given. But of course, and Honorable Mgrini is correct that we are living in an uneven, there's an uneven distribution of digital resources in the country. There are areas of the country where broadband may not be available. So being alive to that fact, the voter management device will have an offline functionality, which would mean you will register, capture everything, ensure that the person is in the right segment of the voters' roll by way of ward. And when we get back to the office, then we'll upload the data into the network, and then the confirmations will then be sent to the voter. We expect to receive the first consignment of these VMDs for purposes of training in the middle of this month. And we will then receive them progressively until the last consignment towards the end of June. All in all, we are procuring 40,000 devices, and we believe those will be sufficient for purposes of the registration weekend. Now, the voter management devices are not an electronic voting gadgets. So this have nothing to do with voting. They will, however, have voting day use, but the voting day use is not linked to recording votes that are cast by voters. we will still be voting on a paper-based process as we have historically known. The voting day use of the VMD will involve checking whether the voter has visited another voting station. So if you like, the VMD will be used in a live voters roll setup, just to check whether the person before me has not presented themselves elsewhere. So that's really the use. Now, in the PLC, we will do a proper demonstration of the functionality of the VMD, and that will be the same throughout the country as we begin to receive the consignments of these gadgets. The critical vacancies. When vacancies arise, and we make an assessment of the criticality of that position against the delivery of the election. So some posts are advertised immediately. Some we're not proceeding with them if an assessment is that it is not critical for the delivery of the election. So in a sense, we don't declare all vacancies redundant, so to speak, but we do an evaluation on a case-by-case basis based on criteria of necessity for the delivery of elections. Yes, indeed, the Commission has already indicated that there will be a single registration weekend, and the Commission will, as the Chair indicated, hopefully in the next few days, announce the date of the registration. The online registration, I think it's an important intervention in the COVID context because it will allow us to, with the necessary safeguards, because that's a critical element, with the necessary safeguards, ensure that those that have access to smart devices and broadband are able to register without having to go onto queues and so on. We currently plan to have that capability available by the end of, let's say, the middle of June. That's the plan. And we will have a social media campaign to support its socialization in the community. The COVID measures for elections, we've discussed with political parties in the party liaison committee around measures that are necessary in terms of social distancing, wearing of a mask, bringing a pen, sanitization, and so on and so on. So those are agreed, and there's a framework document that was agreed with political parties. What we are now looking at are additional measures that have been proposed in the National Party Liaison Committee, and those relate to how can we use special votes creatively to decongest the voting station on election day, i.e. People of a particular age receiving special votes by default, and perhaps people with certain comorbidities being granted special votes and so on. Those matters are being considered, and to the extent that they have financial implications, though that reality still have got to be explored with National Treasury, including maybe running special votes for a greater number of days than has been the case hitherto. The issue of training, We are not reducing training that is geared for the delivery of the elections. That training, we can't, especially in the context of the new VMD. That training is not going to reduce. The training that we have had to reduce over the last 2-3 years is almost your generic management training for permanent staff, and not so much training related to the interface with the voter. That training we cannot afford to reduce because it is crucial for the efficient running of voting stations. Chair, in terms of whether we're going to do door-to-door registration, there are two elements to that question. One, the registration regulations allow for a person to apply in terms of a form called REC2 for reasons of infirmity and so on, to be visited by a registration official at home. So that facility is available. Someone can cause an application to be made on behalf of someone who's infirm or in circumstances of lack of mobility. And then the IC will then make arrangements to visit that person at home for registration purposes. But there are voting stations, or rather voting districts, which have been split, about 1,112 voting districts that have been split by what boundaries. Those communities which have been split and therefore in the wrong segment of the wards, we will be having targeted registration in those communities to ensure that those people don't vote in a wrong ward. That will be a proactive program to go into those communities and do targeted registration. Chair, the targets that we are presenting here today have been amended during our strategic plan last year, taking into account COVID-19. So they've been adjusted to speak to the fact that certain public events are no longer possible, such as the number of voter education, direct voter education workshops. Instead, we've increased radio output, we've increased social media output, and so on in terms of voter education. Chair, I think I've dealt with most of the question about the matters related to budget, which the CFO can address. Thank you very much, Chairperson of the session.
Thank you, CFO.
Thank you, CEO. I'll just, there's two questions I really want to touch on. The first one, I think in understanding the IEC's budget, it's important to understand where we are in terms of the cycle, in terms of our spend. So for example, there are certain periods which are election periods and there are certain periods which are not election periods. So if you look at 1920, it would have been an election period. You look at the subsequent year, it's a non-election year. You also need to be mindful that was also the period where we faced a lot of restrictions. So the spend was significantly lower. You'll also remember in that period, we have a huge rollover, which we upfront actually spoke about to say there was funds that are going to be now rolled over to this year. Now, what informed those funds that being rolled over? It's mainly the procurement of the VMD as well as the registration weekends. Now, these two items are huge cost drivers, and that should then help you understand the plunge or the drop in the different costs that you're asking about. So that covers the first question. The second question asked on the irregular expenditure. I know we didn't actually do a presentation on irregular expenditure because the focus is on the APP and on the budget, but I will touch on it. There is a lot of work on the background that is going on in terms of irregular expenditure. You would also have noticed that our irregular has dropped by almost 500%, if not more. That also talks to the fact that we've taken into considerations recommendation from AGSA, implemented those recommendations. In addition to that is that if you look at the balance that's remaining, there are some dismissals that have come out of that. I think more than 4. We've also got a matter that is sitting with SAPS. So we've applied consequence management, which is what Treasury has guided us to do. There's also continuous engagement in understanding the legislation, the regulations that we have to apply. But we've tried to our best to enhance the processes in terms of dealing with the irregular expenditure. Chair, I'll hand over to you. I think I've covered the 3 questions I wanted to discuss.
Thank you. The chair of the
Commissioner
Machine. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Perhaps some questions that one would respond in a global sense, but what is important for the honorable members, Chair, is to have the appreciation of the context in which this budget is prepared, and we've had to put this budget together. And what we've heard from an operational point of view, what the CEO and the CFO have said. But at the strategic level, when the Commission looks into the situation, it took into consideration that we have a given, whether we like it or not. We are now under an abnormal economic and financial situation for our fiscus. And therefore, the issue of the budget, whether we like it or not, it was a given. It was not for us to argue otherwise. So we had to absorb the pain. And as we said, is that it has had what one will say an impact, especially if you look at the budget and the impact of the reductions, is that it has a cumulative effect on a number of strategic initiatives, which part of those initiatives we had been working on over the last 5 years. But unfortunately, when the budget came in and compounded as well by some of the responses of the portfolio committee members, we had to abandon certain initiatives. And these initiatives, they take a long time for you to actually work on, especially when we're talking about the what you call progressive move in embracing of new technologies, and with the hope of reduction of the budget going forward. And also the disruption to the continuity that was expected. And so there's things that there isn't now enough maintenance. Similarly, when we talk to what you call voter education, and we talk into education and training, the sophistication that is required and expected of an ordinary officer working in a voting station is far, far above the amount of time and resources that we allocate for that person to be optimally operational. So these are the things that we continuously are balancing, but we don't want that we give an impression that in any respect, some of the things that we ideally would have wished are now compromising the election. We are going to be working very closely and continuously at the PLC level to make sure that some of the issues that have been raised here are also filtered in terms of the detail operationally, whether there's any mobile what you call activity at local level, whether voter education is done at what you call in schools and education. That operational detail will be actually be engaged, and we note the questions that the honorable members have actually raised, and these things we as the Commission, we will be engaging the administration to make sure that they are effected So if none of your answers have not been answered, it's not that we as the commissioners are not taking them into consideration. As we then engage operationally with the administration, we will be looking into those particular issues. One thing is, unfortunately, Honorable Mcin, the issue of the pandemic is that all of us are planning knowing there's uncertainty. And we have taken into consideration on our side that there is a PFMA. So when we enter agreements and all those things, it was with the PFMA in mind, and that we should mitigate in the event, let's say, force majeure comes in and we can't proceed. But at this particular point in time, the Constitution is saying X. We are working on those bases. We hope we will not get to that particular point. And unfortunately, I cannot comment about the issue of, in the event then this is cancelled, who is going to pay for costs that have been incurred both by the political parties and also the commission, because there's no provision for that. The Treasury is very clear, and we are working with what is in the Treasury. But I do appreciate and understand that particular concern. We're looking at those issues. We still have to revert back. We had a special meeting with the leaders of the political parties. And as the commission, we are still working to revert back to the political parties, specifically to deal with those particular issues. And thank you very much, honorable members. And thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson Mashinini. Minister, any comment before we step off the IEC?
No, thank you very much. I'm quite satisfied with the responses and the input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Team IEC under Commissioner Mashinini and the political leadership of Minister Mtsoaledi. We really appreciate the presentation and all the issues that have been raised by members. We know at this point that the issues that are raised by members, you do take them into account as you report and your plan of action, Chairperson and the CEO. We really appreciate the good work that you continue to do and the stability in terms of your governance. I think the audit, the financial status clearly identify that area. We know that the budget cuts due to economic conditions have affected most of the department in terms of the budget cuts, their services and programs. And you have tried all your best to cut where in order to achieve some of the targets that you have outlined. And I want to thank you for the detailed brief and responses and taking responsibility on some of the issues that members have been raising for implementation. You have demonstrated in the main during the by-elections that you've conducted previously on the operations on how you have adhered to the COVID regulations. And we're happy that demonstration gave us hope and comfort that as you move forward to 2027 local government elections, at least you will improve where you've identified weaknesses. We'll monitor all the areas that you have raised. On the issues that we must come back to the committee, we'll do call you time to time now that we're going for local government elections. We're taking note that there's a discussions around the leaders of political parties around certain issues that guides how you are interacting with the committee and the programs as indicated in your APP. Members, let's thank the team of IEC and wish them luck, the minister, the chairperson, and the CEO and entire staff members of the IEC. We're stepping off of this item now. As I indicated earlier, I will not repeat it, chairperson and your team.
Thank you.
Members, we're now inviting we're going to an item of government printing works, the presentation. I will invite the minister to introduce the presentation or the government printing work. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson of the day, Honorable Musa Chabane. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, I'm going to allow the acting CEO of Government Printing Works to give the presentation. The only thing I want to mention is the fact that, as you know, the Government Printing Works depends on the work sent to it by other government departments and other entities. But 80% of that work comes from the Department of Home Affairs in the form of IDs, passports, etc. Of course, the other work will be government gazettes and all that. Now, and secondly, because Government Printing Works is self-financing, it never gets a cent from Treasury. Actually, it helps to send money back to Treasury rather than taking from Treasury. So because it is self-financing, if anything happens in the manner in which it gets revenue, like not getting work from the Department of Home Affairs, there will be problems. So you are aware that during the lockdown levels, certain services in Home Affairs were completely closed down. They were not happening. And if they don't happen, it becomes zero revenue for Government Printing Works. And you are going to note it in the presentation. But I must state that having said so, because of the many years in which it had healthy finances, the finances up to now are still very healthy, despite that problem that they've experienced. But you are going to notice that instead of profits or plus in certain years, in this financial year, there was a minus in terms of the revenue. And I just want to explain where it comes from. But otherwise, let me allow the CEO to take you through the presentation. Thank you. Ms. Fossey, please, through you, Chairperson.
CEO.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I was trying to share the presentation. I'm not sure if it's visible.
Yes, proceed, CEO is visible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Acting CEO, proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity to present the GPW's amended APP for the 2021-2022 period. With me, as earlier indicated, I've got members of the executive from GPW. Let me start by greeting Honorable Minister, Honorable GM, Honorable members of the committee, colleagues. I just need to echo really what Minister has said, but not without actually taking away anything from what he has said. Just by indicating that GPW is a government component whose mandate is to support both the constitutional and legislative mandate of the Department of Home Affairs in delivering essential state security documents such as IDs and passports. We are a self-revenue generating entity. We obviously generate our revenue from the sales of our products. Indeed, we are in a healthy financial status as we operate as a going concern. We have been sustainable and shall continue to be sustainable beyond the current MTF cycle. But I need to also upfront mention that we were similarly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, as the Minister has said, so I'm not going to repeat that. However, I need to indicate that our operations ran throughout the COVID lockdown levels. As you may have witnessed, each time the President had to announce a new level of the lockdown, we had to print the regulations and issue them before, so that at least there should be continuity in terms of business. Before I present the APP, I need to indicate that our targets are COVID sensitive. We have sat as a management collective and looked at the most reasonable ways of delivering our services in line with the COVID, and we aligned our targets to the MTSF framework as well. So I'm going to navigate through the presentation, and what I've already mentioned is there. I'm going to start on this slide that indicates that we have 18 performance targets in this current financial year, with the breakdown as follows. Office of the CEO has 3, operations and production, which is our core branch, has 5, strategic management 4, financial services 4, and HR has 2, which sums up a total of 18 targets. I'm just going to go through the targets very briefly so that I give members an idea of what we're going to be doing. In terms of ICT, our target is to make sure that all the security vulnerabilities are detected, and we do that through what we call patching to make sure that we secure the GPW network from time to time. So we need to make sure that 100% of those patches are deployed so that all security can be, risks can be blocked out. Secondly, we need to make sure that 95.9% of server uptime availability is ensured. And honorable members may notice that this is basically a reduction from the previous performance that we had indicated at 99.5. We realized that industry standard dictates that you shall never have 100% availability in your systems, and the target is actually set at 95.5% and above, hence the reduction in there to ensure that we become realistic and aligned to the industry. In terms of the audit action plan, we also have considered the challenges that we experience with COVID, because this is one target that is dependent on dependencies actually from the external committees. We have the external audit committee, members' availability, and the availability of senior management teams to be able to ensure that the audit action plans are implemented, the audit matrix are put in place, and there's follow through on those. So we decided to put it at 90% just to accommodate in case the staff rotation and members are not fully on site, to enable us to get the audits finalized as required. I'm going to move to the core branch. This is the core branch that carries the mandate of the organization, where we print ID documents and we make sure that whatever we shall have received from Home Affairs, we print in totality in line with the quality and quantity specifications that they provide. Similarly, on the travel documents, the same standard applies. We subscribe to ICAO standards, which means we should be a Sigma 5 level at this point in time, which takes the minimum levels of wastage on the products that we deliver, and make sure that there's customer satisfaction in the quality that we eventually deliver to our clients. Similarly, we have ensured that all the specifications from the Department of Education, Higher Education and Basic Education, from the examination papers that they deliver to us, we make sure that we deliver them as required so that the students can actually write the proper exams. We also deliver 100% of government gazettes that we receive, and we make sure that we publicize them in line with what the client requires. We continue to print state security documents in a form of certificates for various entities, including the subs-gun licenses, and we ensure that whatever has been requested is delivered accordingly. Branch strategic management is one branch that enables us to interact with our customers, both locally as well as beyond the borders of the Republic. And we have done that through the development of the integrated marketing and communication strategy. This strategy has run its course, is due for review, and the current year will look at the different phases that we need to enter based on the practice as was emanating from the implementation period. So we're going to look into that in the quarters of the financial year, but we're also going to have follow-up engagements. We have to date engaged all the SADC countries, and as expected, this is again another dependency where you approach a country or they approach us and we engage them, but the actual finalization of the SLAs, the delivery of the actual products, depends on their availability, and they are coming back to say, yes, we are now on board, you can then continue to print. So we are going to be engaging 8 potential customers. And as we have indicated before in the prior APP, we continue to make sure that we have our foot on the door so that when an opportunity arises, we can then be able to penetrate that market and be able to print those security documents. Central to COVID has been GPW's capacity and capability to continue to operate, and we deemed it fit to come up with a business continuity management plan, which started with strategies as well as a policy document, and now we are implementing phase 1 of that. In the middle of COVID, we have to make sure that there are specific outputs that continue to be delivered amidst the COVID, because as a manufacturing entity, there's just no way that we could say that we can't operate because of the lockdown levels, as I've already mentioned with the regulations. We have actually benchmarked ourselves against the likes of South African Reserve Bank, South African Banknote, as well as SA Mint and other international institutions on the security model for GPW. As you would imagine, with all the cybersecurity challenges that we have, we had to then upgrade our security model just to make sure that we have state-of-the-art systems within the printing facilities, within the offices, so that we can secure both our systems, our information, as well as our officials in the facilities. Branch financial services, we strive to attain an unqualified audit opinion, and we will going to do that by making sure that our annual financial statements are submitted in time. We have a post-audit action plan that is regularly monitored just to make sure that whatever has been raised by AG as an outcome of the audit process, both internal and external auditors, we document it in the audit matrix, and we make sure that each and every branch head is held accountable. These reports are presented at each and every X meeting, and each GM must be held accountable in terms of the resolution of those, including the repeat findings. In the finance environment, we continue to want to maintain a positive capital working ratio, and we maintain it at 3% at this point in time. The 10% net profit margin, this is in line with the industry standard. Each and every entity in our sector should not have a profit margin that is less than 10%. So this is just the baseline. However, we strive to actually increase our profit margins where required. And we maintained it at this level so that should COVID have a challenge on us, we shouldn't actually go beyond that, because currently we have a capability and capacity to maintain our profits at that level. We are going to ensure that our financial statements are submitted by the 31st of May in each year, with in-year monitoring reports submitted 30 days after conclusion of each quarter to the relevant treasury. Then we have human resource management. Our budget is gender sensitive. We have looked into measures in which we could implement our own employment equity plan. And we then decided to have the employment of young people as well as women and people with disabilities prioritized. In the past financial year, we have seen an appointment of about 20 young people. We are continuing in the 2021-22 financial year to recruit those young graduates. And if we look at the sector generally, it's an aging sector where most of our artisans are actually reaching retirement age. So we need an injection of new skills and fresh ideas, energetic new employees that will be able to carry our mandate and be able to help us migrate into the digital age, because everyone now is focusing on digital printing so that we can remain competitive as an entity. We continue to build our own timber. It's important to actually sharpen the saw. From time to time, you need to train your officials. So what we do, we create a constructive linkage between your personal development plans as well as the workplace skills plans, so that we enhance the performance levels within the organization. I'm going to, Chairperson, through your indulgence, request that the CFO takes us through the following slides that deals with the finances, and I shall take over thereafter. Through you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. 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 Acting CEO, what's the problem?
Chair, he was connected. earlier, so I'm really not sure.
Good morning, colleagues. Good afternoon. Sorry, good morning, Chairperson. Sorry for that. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Pitsimoloto. Sorry about that. Just the challenges that I had here with my mic as such, but I'm fine now. My name is Pitsimoloto, as I said, and greetings to everybody, the Chairperson, members of the portfolio committees, our Honorable Minister, the Honorable Deputy Minister, all protocols observed, if I have to say likewise, because I will go straight to the presentation, Chairperson, through your indulgence, of course. I will just give a high level in the 18-19 actuals, then I'll go, of course, to the 2021, of course, to the current budget into the MTF. In 2018-19, Chairperson, our actuals was that we received 1.5 billion of our cost of our sales. And then our cost of sales, our direct labor was 199 million, because the figures are in thousands, and the direct labor 124. And operating expenditure of 96, that is your overheads, and your finished goods of 319, which means our cost of sales for that particular year was 732 million. Our gross profit of 777 million, denoting 51% of our gross profit. And with other income, that will constitute our unearned interest, together with discounts received, as well as I said, the interest that was later on received of 1.6 million. And of course, our loss in foreign exchange, because most of our machines and machinery, we get them from Germany and other European countries. We made a loss there too because of the rand exchange of 21 million. As such, our overall was 9.6. Our total expenses, our employee benefits was 109 million. Other admin expenses for 39 million. Production and stores of 1 million, and professional fees 60 million. Depreciations and provisions of 19 million, and other sundry expenses 411,000, making our total expenditure for 250 million. Overall, our net profit was sitting at 35.4%. And as I move into the 2021 financial year, the year that has just ended, as the Honorable Minister and the acting CEO has said earlier on, that due to the hard lockdown, we were unable to print the passports in the mail as well as the IDs. As such, that affected our budget, that our actual at that time was 608 million. So instead of 1 billion. And as we can see, however, be that it may be, only our direct material reduced, but our direct labor and operating expenses and finished goods were there at 170 million for finished goods. Hence our cost of sales of 488 million. And our gross profit was sitting only at 19%, 19.67% of 119 million. For other income, of course, was 42 million, and lost in foreign exchange because of that time due to the lockdown, hard lockdown, we were unable to order materials from abroad of 811. Obviously, our variable costs will not change, and our direct and as well as our fixed cost being employee benefits as well as admin expenses. Those ones will remain, of course, because we have to pay our employees as well as rent and various other expenses. As such, we ended up with a net total expenses of 209 million, making our net loss for year and for the previous financial year of 47 million. So showing the net loss of -7%. For the year under review, Chairperson, that is the year 2021, we have budgeted 1.4 billion, and we have budgeted for direct materials of 389, our direct labor of 200 million, operating expenditure of 192 million, the finished goods 132, we're expecting the gross profit of 36%, denoting the 535 million. And obviously our other income of 46 million. And then because we cannot project what will happen as far as the rand-dollar exchange is concerned, that one is something that is a timing difference issue. Our employee costs, employee benefits of 157 million, admin expenses of 66 million, production and stores 1.7 million, equipment of 2.8 million, our professional fees of 152. This will also include professional fees. I need to say that we've got people on standby, especially in production, that make sure that our machinery and equipment, when there is a fault, we don't suffer any wastage of time as far as production of IDs and passports, as well as examination papers are concerned. Depreciations and provisions of 29 million, and the sundry expenses, that is your daily expenses of 26 million. As I said, Chairperson, as the acting CEO has said, that we're projecting a 10% overall every now and then for our budget of our net profit percentage of 10%. If we can move to the next slide, I will just do the April 21 and March 21 next CEO. Slide number 31, thanks. Our property and plant equipment, that is our fixed assets, for the 1st of April, they were projected to be at 1.5. Our inventory at 287 million, everything is in thousands, Chairperson. And then our trade and other receivables, that is your debtors, of 241,350,000. Our cash and cash equivalents, as both the Honorable Minister and the CEO has said, that we are in a very good financial position. We've got a very good balance in South African Reserve Bank of 2.63 billion. That is the cash on hand. Now, the money that is distributable to National Treasury, if Treasury requires such kind of money, as the Honorable Minister has said, is 881 million. Our capital fund, this is what we can now deploy to make sure that we've got new buildings, for example, buying new machinery of 2.8, and our deferred income, that is for our unearned interest and so forth, of 240,000. So 240 million. Our trade and other payables that we owe, of course, is only 116 million, and our accruals and provisions of 6.1 million. And of course, if I go to that's the projections for the year under review as far as the balance sheet is concerned. And our property, plant and equipment, we're hoping that at the end of the financial year, we'll be sitting at 2.1 billion for our property, plant and equipment, inventory of 306 million, trade and other receivables of 277, cash and cash equivalents, that is the hard liquid cash, of 1.5 billion, meaning our total assets at the end of that year should be, this year under review, should be at 4.2 billion. And of course, money that will be distributable to National Treasury at that time will be 1,013,054,000. Our capital fund of 2.8, and our deferred income of 204 million, trade and other payables of 138, because we're trying to pay our creditors within 30 days, and our accruals and provisions for 6.1 million. If we move to the next slide, our planned for 2021, our planned capital expenditure, CAPEX as they normally say, for asset replacements, we are looking at 298 million. Our fixed asset this time, we talk about our ICT, as far as computers and so forth are concerned, we're looking at to spend about 75 million. Our fixed assets, that is your furniture, 10 million. Our fixed equipment, fixed assets, that is equipment, of 8.5 million. And our lease improvements, in this case, our head office, the master plan development, for us to move into the ABSA building, of 150 million. This is what we're hoping that we can be able to spend this year, everything being equal, to move so that we can be working in the same proximity of each other. And last but not least for me, the slide that to say we have allocated a budget for the management of COVID-19, other professional fees of 2 million, printing materials of 150 million, cleaning services, that is fogging, etc., of 1 million, PPE for all the staff for the requirement of 350,000. As such, our budget for COVID is 3.5 billion. That is kept in terms of the COVID-19 regulatory infrastructure, so that we can maintain and uphold standards that has been set by the presidency. Through you, Chairperson, and honorable members, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CFO. CEO, you still have to comment on the report?
Yes, Chairperson. May I continue, Chairperson?
Yes, proceed,
Right.
Acting CEO.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Okay, just to proceed, Chair, I need to also indicate, following what this acting CFO has actually said, I need to correct that. It's actually our acting CFO, because we do not have a substantive CFO as yet. So our acting CFO has mentioned the finances. I just need to indicate that we've developed protocols in line with the Department of Public Service and Administration, just to make sure that we also manage COVID appropriately. And perhaps just to elaborate further on this, since the beginning of the lockdown, we've issued a pair of masks to all our employees, sanitizers. We ensure that the social distancing, there's attendance registers at the entrances. So before you get in, you must sign, the pens are sanitized. We've also introduced remote working. During the COVID lockdown levels, we realized that we need to continue to operate, as I've mentioned, in line with our business continuity management plan. So we then allocated VPN services. We availed it to officials who were supposed to function remotely. For instance, all the officials, about 10 of them who were operating from home, printing gazettes and the regulations, were actually provided with all the assistive devices to make sure that they operate effectively and efficiently from home. And we ensured staff rotation as well to limit the numbers. So we maintain the protocols just to make sure that staff is safe. We develop a risk management strategy and the risk registers aligned to COVID-19. And this has been implemented and monitored on a regular basis. We actually have a resident clinic as well, because as a manufacturing sector, we need to make sure that anything that happens within the environment, people can then be referred for immediate help. So we've got nurses as well as a doctor on site. So the temperature scanning is done. And we've also reduced our meetings to virtual platforms, as well as the training sessions, just to make sure that we manage, the issues of social distancing. So we've gone a mile in terms of managing COVID. Risk assessments are conducted from time to time. We have a COVID circle that has been established, chaired by GMHR, and there's labor unions that form part of those. So any matter that pertains to COVID-19 are actually handled there, but of course escalated to EXCO so that any decision can be made or troubleshooting be done, including closing and offices or closing and opening offices during the infections, so that we comply with the regulations. We certainly lost an employee due to COVID-related complications in the previous financial year, and we currently have 2 employees that have been placed on long-term incapacity leave, particularly due to COVID-related illnesses. So yeah, it's quite a sad situation. During the very the year that we're talking to 2020, 2021, we suffered massive losses. And I think the CFO has actually mentioned that, so I'm not going to go into that, because the printing of IDs was halted, as well as in the first quarter of 2020, 2021. How we're managing the risk as well as audit processes. We've got oversight structures in the form of risk committee as well as audit committee. And we have put in place an enterprise-wide risk management process to make sure that there's business continuity, and I've mentioned that already. We have key documents such as the policy on risk as well as strategies and the annual risk implementation plans that we review at the risk committee level. as well as the audit committee. Risk assessments are periodically done to manage the risk exposures and to make sure that the appetite as well as the tolerance levels are managed at the correct levels. And then we monitor progress during our management meetings internally as well as at the governance structures, as I've mentioned. The post-audit action plan is actually developed. We have an audit matrix that internal audit monitors on a regular basis for us and reports on it at every EXCO meeting. And we make sure that we hold management accountable. But the accountability doesn't only end there. Based on the outcomes indicated in the management report, we have launched an investigation into fruitless, irregular, and wasteful expenditure that has been concluded, and consequence management is underway on areas that have been recommended by the service provider in that regard. The internal controls were cited as one key challenge for GPW based on the qualification that we got. So we established an internal controls committee to make sure that management sits there and take decisions to resolve all the audit findings, manage the control deficiencies, and facilitate effective resolution of all those. Due to the escalation process on the audit to the AGSA by GPW management, the 2019-2020 financial year audit has not yet been finalized. We are still awaiting feedback from AGSA to make sure that we can finalize that process. Honorable members, Chairperson, I've decided to include the risks as well. I've already spoken to some of them, but I will just elevate those that I haven't mentioned. The first one being the risk on paper. We realized that due to the digitization and movement and the opportunities provided by 4IR, the printing sector has gone digital as well. Hence, GPW is also focusing on its efforts on its modernization program, just to make sure that we remain competitive and we don't run ourselves out of business. So we realize that if we continue to be paper-based, we may run into a challenge of actually not having sufficient base paper to produce our documents, simply because people are moving away from using paper towards digitization. However, we've got options that we've been exploring. We started with the paper mill one, but we thought, let us engage the experts in the form of CSIR to help us do a study that can help us to actually see whether there's an appetite for that in the market or not. Otherwise, outside of that, we're engaging our strategic partners to ensure that relationships are engaged. When certain products are discontinued, they should let us know. We spoke about finalization of the head office as well as the master plan. As soon as we are ready to do that, all the officials that we want to appoint will make sure that we will house them in there so that they can actually have a conducive working environment. The capacity of the workforce that we have in terms of training, building our own team, I've already spoken to that in line with the workplace case plan. It's one of the risks is if we don't derive value for money from that, then we will run ourselves into trouble. So we're monitoring that through human resources to make sure that there's value for money for all the trainees. We have put mechanisms in place to manage the risk of coordination of all our governance activities, including compliance and risk management, particularly to make sure that all the audit findings are implemented and resolved. And internal audit has been assisting us with that, as I've already mentioned. And the last one, it has been delays in the implementation of security model because of the benchmarkings that we have done, but we are currently underway, and the head office plan that has been finalized has that state-of-the-art security to accommodate GPW in this regard. Our key strategic projects, in a nutshell, we have started the project with Home Affairs to implement the e-passport series. Engagements have happened. We realized, as I've mentioned, as a risk that Anstra, our contract with them came to an end. However, we've issued a tender to find a suitable paper producer in this regard. We've done the designs with Home Affairs, and as soon as that tender process is finalized, we will then appoint the service provider. However, we're also looking at the localization strategy where we can see how we can leverage on the internal service providers within the country who can help us with the base papers. Polycarbonate Plant, this is the target that we've been carrying, the project that we've been carrying even in the last APP. We did indicate that the intention is to have a polycarbonate plant established within the country and again supporting the local market. We have engaged the CSIR because we realized that obviously most of our paper is imported from Gimalto in France. CSIR has done a techno-economic study for us in the previous year, but we want to implement it fully in the 2021-2022 financial year with an initiative of trying to identify potential service providers based on the recommendations of that study. The master plan is another key project, which is a key milestone actually for GPW. Once we move into digital space, we need to add the new technology in place in the form of machines, software, and hardware. So we need to make sure that that building is finalized as a matter of urgency so that we can then migrate all our equipment into it. It's a precinct that is bordered by Koshimamburu, as well as our current Fisari and Minar streets. However, we have a huge dependency on DPWI, where we have been engaging with them to shorten their turnaround time, because as opposed to the past 5 years, we could have actually moved into this building in the 2021-22 financial year. But when we presented our plans to them, they're still projecting a period of 6 years in terms of finalizing this, which we really do not have if we are to remain competitive. So we have approached Dr. Ramukhopa of Infrastructure SA to actually intervene and talk to officials in the Department of Public Service, DP, Public Works and Infrastructure. I've also engaged the DG there to make sure that we facilitate this project, but negotiations are still underway. But we are forging ahead to make sure that this project is finalized. I've mentioned the head office. We have finalized the specifications. We are collaborating with the Construction Industry Development Board just to make sure that everything is above board. And we are going out on a tender to make sure that we get a company to refurbish the plans, the look and feel, the allocation of the floors, all that has been finalized. We just need to go out on a tender and make sure that at least officials move into this building by the end of the year. We continue to focus on an enabling legislation for GPW in the form of a security printers bill. We need to have this finalized and tabled both in the National Assembly as well as NCOP. We have been consulting with various stakeholders, and recently Home Affairs Legal Services has been assisting us to present this to a cohort of HODs and MECs, and we've already done Limpopo, KZN, and Mpumalanga. And I know that we go into the Eastern Cape soon, as well as the Western Cape, and we will be able to conclude this within a few couple of months so that eventually it can serve before Cabinet and Parliament, and then the bill can be enacted. We have the key strategic projects that, towards closing, we have the key strategic projects that we are implementing as GPW. And I need to indicate that when I mentioned the integrated marketing and community strategy and the footprint expansion that we would like to have into SADC, perhaps it will be important for me at this point in time to take members into confidence and indicate progress that we've made towards this initiative. We have critical projects and countries that we have implemented. The first one being with Eswatini, then we have Namibia, we've got the DRC, there's initiatives with the AU Commission Passports and the SADC Univisa. We have had strategic engagements with those countries, and up to a point where at this point in time, I can report that in terms of the SADC Univisa, we have the prototype that has been finalized for that visa label. The concept has been finalized, and the SADC Secretariat is actually concluding on the costing. And in May, we should have that finalized, and then we should move into the printing phase with the approval of the SADC Secretariat Committee. Eswatini, we started engaging Eswatini in 2018, and we visited them. They also came to our facility, and we've already concluded an SLA with them. We are printing vocational certificates for them already under the Department of Labor, that side. We are in the process of printing educational certificates with them. And of course, the target has always been to print their IDs and passports, but delays in terms of the political changes in that country has actually halted that process. But we are engaging them further in May to make sure that that objective is realized. In terms of Namibia, we have had engagements with them since 2019, and the objective has been to print also their security certificates and IDs and passports. Currently, the first phase that they allowed us to do was to print their birth marriages and death certificates. And at this point in time, the prototypes are done, the SLA has been drafted, and we are in the process of concluding that. The technical team have been meeting, so we should then start printing their documents. So in the SLA that we've signed with them has two phases. The first phase is the certificates. The second one is actually IDs and passports. So we should be making inroads into that space. The AU Commission actually approached us and said they wanted us to print the AU passport for them. And we have had engagements. We actually are the preferred service provider for them. We've presented a project plan. And in line with that, we should then be able to conclude the tender process with them. And we're hoping that as soon as that is finalized, we will then move and print their document. DRC, again, engagements have happened virtually throughout the lockdown. It's just unfortunate that at the time when they wanted to visit, it was a time when we lost our employees, sadly, so they couldn't come. We had to postpone that visit, but now they are on track. As soon as their minister is in the country, we are going to then, through our minister, continue with that engagement so that we can be able to take that document. So that is basically the progress in that regard. I thought I should just go into town just to mention what we've done so far. Research has actually proven that countries that we are engaging, some of them in the SADC or in the African continent have been printing with their former colonial masters. And what you find is that to date, when you engage them, they still tell you that we're still printing in London, in Germany, and so forth. However, what we do, we continue to want to penetrate that market. So we've got an aggressive strategy of going to their countries as well as going to the embassies in South Africa to ensure that we have a foot in the door. When those contracts come to an end, GPW should then be available to take over. So those engagements are actually happening. The countries that we targeted this financially are Eswatini, Botswana, Lesotho, Zambia, Malawi, DRC, Kenya, and Zimbabwe. So I think, Chairperson, on that note, I would like to pause because we're done with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Acting CEO and Acting CFO. And I think the Minister will tell us why he has too many acting in the department. I think the post of the CEO has been there since we came to the committee. Minister, you may need to give us the update around this matter. We've been raising it for some time. And also on the issue of the CFO. You remember that when we came to conduct oversight, amongst the issues were surrounding the governance and the issues that arise in relation to the matter of the applications that were stolen on the post of the CFO. I'm raising this because it appears there's still an acting CEO, so it appears the issues were not dealt with. We want to thank you for the presentation. I'm going to request members to make comments or questions on the APP presented and the financial position of the government printing works, and then we'll then request the minister, the TM, and the team led by the acting CEO to give responses on those issues. I'll start with the Honorable Pillay, Honorable Tito, Honorable Ross, Honorable Mulekwa, Honorable Mqini, Veteran Lokota, and Honorable Mutise. I got an indication that Honorable Lokwase has just been called on emergency, but she'll be back. She's still attending to an emergency matter of a child. In that order, Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and let me also welcome the presentation. Chairperson, firstly, I just wanted to find out in terms of the move, in terms of governing government printing works, is there some kind of time frame in terms of when the move is going to happen? Then also in 2020, 2021, GPW engaged 10 SADC countries informed of GPW product and service offerings. The target has been lowered to 5 for the current financial year. Can the department explain the lowering of the target? And can the department also explain how these engagements have yielded or are yielding the desired results? On slide 25, in 2018-2019, the department attained 40% net profit margin achieved. And in 2019-2020, the department achieved 10%. And 10% has been its target for the rest of the MTF. What caused the decline and what informs the department's target of 10% for the medium term? And then in slide 38, regarding the e-passport series, the presentation mentions that the contract with the supplier ended in July 2019, and taking cognizance of the importance of e-passports and its potential benefits given the digital age in which we live, between the expiration of the contract being expired in July 2019, up to the beginning of the lockdown in March 2020, what work has been done to ensure that the project is kept alive, and how far the engagements with the DTIC? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Pillay, Honorable Tito.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chairperson, from my side, I'm fine. I won't ask any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tito. Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the acting CEO for the presentation. And please allow me to extend the condolences of the Democratic Alliance for the GPW employee who passed away. I have a few questions. First of all, we have a target of 90% of approved annual internal audit plan implementation, and this seems to be almost going backwards. Where we had a situation of getting between 94 and 100% of these targets. Is there a specific reason why there's a drop? Surely, if you're going for a clean audit, you are aiming for 100%. Then we have, obviously we haven't had audited financial statements on time for the last 2 years. In terms of that risk, are you comfortable that in the coming year that we are going to get our financial statements on time for the coming financial year? Then a couple of questions on the financials. I see that there are sundry expenses which have been a few $100,000, and suddenly in the next 3 years they are going up to 28 million rand. That's quite a substantial change. What are those sundry expenses? Professional services as well. It's going from sort of 60, 75 to 40, obviously, and then it jumps up to 152, 163. What are those professional expenses? And are they fixed expenses, or are they depending on whether the number of passports and that kind of thing that you produce? The trade receivables, that's quite a lot. It's what is it, 250 million rand? Is that all government customers, or are there any private sector customers that owe you that amount of money? And then I see there's obviously trade payables. So do you have an idea of what your operating cycle is in this regard? Then as a second last question is about cash. I see that you're keeping 1.5 billion rand in cash and cash equivalents. Is there a reason that you're holding onto the cash and not looking to invest it in revenue generating assets that can actually perhaps diversify what you're doing or improve the cash flow of the business? And then finally, looking at the polycarbonate plant, is this on track as it stands now? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Rose. Thanks very much. Honorable Molekwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentation as presented by the Government Printing Works Chairperson. I think we must also appreciate the work that has been done by the Government Printing Works so far, especially on the repositioning of the Government Printing Works, on the engagement of the SADC countries. Chairperson, I don't have much of the question. Mine is just to welcome the presentation because the presentation entails more details and more information that we needed, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mulekwa. Honorable Mkene.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Not much questions on this topic. But I wanted to comment to say that this is a public entity, it's a state-owned entity. There have been media statements that SOE, they're not able to generate profits and all that nonsense. So you see that here you have an entity that is having liquid cash, that's having profits. There is a nice working relationship between departments and, they are paying time and all of that. So this myth that the SOEs are not able to work, and also Black people cannot manage those things. So it's sort of a, there must be a will to be able to actually do that. So that is quite something very impressive, actually, that in a positive way, that if you want to make the SOEs to work, we can make them to work. Now, I'm also welcoming the fact that the GPW is exploring other markets in Africa. That should teach you something about Pan-Africanism, that we must not have a situation where we suffer from self-hate and we look at our African brothers as, as foreigners and all of that. Because once we do that, we're not able to, to have that kind of tapping into those markets. And the acting CFO touched on something that is very serious, and then of which my political party, the EFF, that's what we're actually looking at in terms of having relationships with our other African countries. Going to have an African country that is doing business with the former colonizers. It's pathetic at this day and age. So that is the market that was supposed to be tapped by us in South Africa and them benefiting from us. So we should look into that, and I encourage them that they must have those engagement with those countries, and let us do everything possible in our countries so that we can tap into the market. And I welcome the free trade. Let us also, through the Department of Home Affairs, not to be, very aggressive to our African brothers and speed up. We must have those friendly relationships, not the tensions that we saw during this COVID, this pandemic, and where the South African authorities and the Zimbabwean authorities, they were having some tensions. So we should have a friendly relationship so that we can tap into those markets. And also, I wanted to check with the GPW that do you have any money allocated? Because where there's money, they say the money is the root of all evil. What systems do you have? Any strong systems to make sure that corruption is dealt with decisively? Do you have a corruption unit where you find that if there's people that have been accused of stealing and all of that, you are able to deal with that? Do you have an efficient system? Because you've got money there that is lying, it's lying around. I mean, you got liquid cash and all of that. You're making a lot of profit. So there are thugs and criminals there who are looking to loot. So what I don't see that you are having a unit, a corruption busting unit, or an internal or a risk office that is very capacitated and efficient. Because I look at it that, in terms of your audit outcomes, you're taking too long to really get through them. So what is your plan to make sure that you bust all those thugs and corrupt individuals who wants to take that, who wants to steal the last one? Is there a way that you could, on your governance, to protect whistleblowers? Do you have maybe a box or, where employees can be able to whistleblow and all of that? Because we don't want to deal with letters which are flying up and down. I mean, there are letters which are flying down, counter accusations and all of that. Is there a way that you could deal with those kind of issues internally? I think in other companies, they have boxes where people can whistleblow. then you can quickly arrest it in your system. We don't want to deal with letters, counter you this one and come back and all of that. So is there a plan or a way that you could deal with that, or a comment box or something that people can, whistleblow, or if people have any grievances, they are able to put so that they can come to your attention and the leadership before it can come into this committee of ours and start to, to divide everyone. So Chair, those are my small questions on this thing. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Mkini. Veteran Lukuta. Veteran Lokota.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just struggling to unmute myself. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think this is a very refreshing input, so we can see how the department is indeed generating income, not only from inside the country, but even from surrounding countries. And I am really rising to congratulate the department for giving such a positive report. Like my previous speaker, I just want to encourage them to ensure that this part of the work must be an example that is held out there to show South Africans that we can use government to generate income and to build the incomes of the country. I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Veteran Lokota. Honorable Mudisa.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just a few questions from my side. There are modernization initiatives indicated on page 27 of the APPs. I just want to know how many of those initiatives have been put in place so far. And secondly, Chair, in the last 2 years, to what extent have the plans to get the government security printing business in the SADC countries bearing any fruits? Are we seeing any positive outputs from those initiatives as well? And lastly, Chair, I see that they have removed the manufacturing of polycarbonate in South Africa, which would have been a target for the previous years. So I need to get clarity on why are those removed from the targets, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, colleagues, for your questions and comments on the presentation. We're going to request the acting CEO and the acting CFO to make comment and response. And we request the Deputy Minister and the Minister to make additions or responses if are outstanding from the acting CEO. Acting CEO.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. As I've already indicated, I'm flanked by ExCo members, and I'm going to ask them to, through your indulgence, come through and be able to respond to some of the questions. However, I'm going to start and respond to those that have been asked by some of the members. The question from Honorable Pillay on the movement to the new building. I need to indicate, honorable members, Minister DM, colleagues, that we have two buildings that we are yet to move into. The first one is the new head office, which is opposite the current Fisari, the building in Fisari, which is our second head office at this point in time, because we've got two offices, Bosman office as well as Fisari. The new that ABSA building that we have actually procured to make sure that we refurbish into our new head office. As I've mentioned in the presentation, the tender process will start now in June. The plans have been finalized. We actually have a bridge that's supposed to interconnect that building to the current Pavilion 1 building in Fisari. So supply chain management is busy with the procurement process, and as soon as that is finalized, we shall appoint a service provider to come and refurbish the building. We are anticipating to move into that building at the end of this year, if not by the end of the financial year. So that movement is on track. The second one, which is the broader master plan, is the one that I've indicated that we still have a huge dependency on public works. And as a result, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to move into that building now because of the dependencies that I've already mentioned. However, we have actually engaged our minister to request support in terms of engaging DPWI. And I have also engaged the DG as well as the Office of Dr. Ramokgopa to make sure that we facilitate our engagements with public works. Key to that has been to ask for an exemption from GIAMA, which actually enables us to transact with the service providers without actually them getting hands-on, but obviously exercising oversight. And they have actually not granted that permission to opt out of GIAMA, and they want to insist that they are the ones managing the project. So as a result, there will be a delay, and it's going to be difficult for me at this point in time to indicate when we're going to move, because it's dependent on all those engagements. The issue of SADC as well as the engagements has come through, and I think honorable members have mentioned that. I know honorable members, I think 2, if not 3, have actually raised that. And Honorable Molekwa has also come in, as well as Honorable Modisa. I just want to respond by saying that earlier in the presentation, when I gave an account of the different countries that we are basically engaging now, being in the SADC, Univisa, the DRC, Eswatini, as well as the DRC, Eswatini, as well as Namibia. Yes, I went into detail in terms of explaining even the products that we are offering. So at this point in time, there is considerable progress that has been made, particularly with regards to printing for Eswatini, Namibia, as well as the DRC and the AU Commission and the SADC Univisa. But I've mentioned in the presentation that we are engaging 8 more countries to make sure that we make further inroads into those, because of the challenge of now that they're still printing with their post-colonial masters, but we are making inroads in that regard. So I'm gonna, that's by way of covering all the questions that pertains to progress that we have made so far with the engagements. And perhaps let me latch on to specifically the one where we have dropped the target. I've indicated that our targets are COVID sensitive, and we realize that having to reach the specific countries for engagements has been a bit of a challenge. We followed through, we called, we even have to walk to embassies to go and at least try and facilitate the engagements, but other countries have similarly been infected and affected by the COVID pandemic, so their availability had been limited. We're still aiming to get more, but we thought let us be more realistic and target 5 whilst we are pursuing more, just to make sure that we don't bite more than we can chew. But the objective is to actually do more in that regard. The questions on finance, I'm going to ask the acting CFO to actually cover. Most of them are coming from Honorable Pillay, acting CFO, as well as Honorable Ruos, who has actually asked a number of questions with regards to that. And then I will then ask acting GM operations to cover the questions on the polycarbonate initiatives that we had pursued. I need to indicate that it was not necessarily a target, but it has remained a strategic project for us, and we are going to make sure that we maintain it in all our presentations going forward. So we will make sure that that is actually maintained. In terms of the questions from Honorable Mgrini, I need to acknowledge all the comments. Indeed, Africa can actually have homegrown solutions, and GPW is one such. We do have internal structures to deal with corruption, fraud and corruption, and that also has translated into registers, risk registers to focus especially on fraud and corruption. We've got the hotlines that obviously links up with the ones in the broader public service. We've got internal investigative capacity and capability from the security side as well as internal audit. But we also have attorneys on site in the event that we don't have internal capacity to investigate and deal with acts of corruption, so that there should be consequence management in that regard. Our risk registers have controls just to make sure that we are enabled to put stricter controls in place. If you've got policies and procedures and you implement them accordingly, then you are able to manage that environment with relative ease. We've got a whistleblowing policy as well that we are implementing to make sure that all the whistleblowers are actually managed. However, I need to indicate that we do have a challenge of people, instead of dealing with administrative matters internally, they just choose a populist, unfortunately, a populist approach where the internal administrative matters are then splashed all over the media. It's a challenge that we are currently dealing with because we've got platforms that we have availed internally. We do have suggestion boxes. We have the HR unit that is meant to deal with grievances internally. And we do have structures that we have put in place, like having bilaterals with our labor unions. They know as well that they are free to actually engage us at EXCO and also have meetings with the CEO. We actually have a document written back to labor indicating that such platforms are available. However, they are not being taken advantage of. And then we learn about some communication being splashed in the media instead of being channeled to internally so that we could address those issues. But such platforms, chairperson, honorable members, are available, and we still remain committed to actually deal with those matters internally as well as through our own minister. So I need to perhaps pause here and allow the CFO to start, and then we'll be allowed by acting GM operations in this regard. Through you, chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO, acting CFO.
Good morning once more, Chairperson. Thanks. And Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. My first question would be around the issue around sundry expenses. Why are they increasing over the years? As I said earlier on, we are moving into new premises as well. Now we're going to have to maintain our premises. We're going to make sure that there's full maintenance as well as repair on the structures that we're going to put in place. Secondly, what makes that is, of course, we are moving into SADC, and as such, there should be, whether we're going to meet with our suppliers, our people that we supply IDs in the SADC region, be it virtual or otherwise, we need to make sure that they have got enough budget to cover for such expenses. And obviously, the other one is in line with what it was asked, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Unfortunately, Chairperson, I cannot pronounce the same name. It starts with MG. I'm sorry about that. My sincere apologies. It's with regards to if we're going to keep too much cash in our premises, can we now diversify in order for us to get more funds? As such, we are looking into that as part of the this year on the policies that we're going to put in place, so that we can put that in areas where we can generate more revenue. But however, that also comes with its own challenges because we still have to pay charges as far as that is concerned. And also our protective clothing, we want to make sure that we have that, and various other fuel expenses, because now obviously this is an institution as a manufacturing enterprise. So all those things we take it into cognizance currently. Now you'll recall that, as I said the previous financial year, why it was so low, because there was just no production at all. That is why you see that increase. Secondly, coming to the issue of professional services, those are variable expenses depending on the number of IDs, passports, etc. that we produce. The professional fees are in relation to the people that will be sitting on those, sitting on standby to make sure that they maintain the machines in pavilion 1 and 2 and 3. I think the general acting GM, as far as production is concerned, will clarify that how those people operate, because we're paying them within, yeah. I think that what satisfies to say that those will be professional fees that we're looking into. The other issue is the 250 million that is owed. Is it all by government? Yes, is by all government departments, almost 99% of that, not about the private sector. And obviously our main trade receivable will be Department of Home Affairs, who we are doing business with them at arm's length. They are a related party through the ministry. And then, of course, other departments will be Department of Basic Education, Department of South African Police Services. And if we want the breakdown for the previous financial year, Chairperson, I'll be willing to provide, but we've got the figures are readily available. And on the issues of trade and other payables, those will be mainly our suppliers, especially Enstar, Mondi, and where we're getting our paper, as well as Powermark. And then we paying within 30 days of our cycle. Once that has been, the goods have been delivered, and we are happy with the consignment as such, we are paying within 30 days. We don't have problems as far as that is concerned. It's just that to give us a leeway so that we don't have to say that our debtors, our creditors, but we don't, all our creditors are sitting within the 30 days bucket. The other one is on regards to the annual financial statements for the coming, are we getting them on time? Chairperson, I need to hint that we do have some challenge, and this has been escalated to the minister with regards to the current financial year, as the acting CEO has said that the issues around escalations on the annual, on the finalization of the audit for the 1920. For the 2021, Chairperson, we have a slight challenges as far as the worst challenges that happened in February this year, that happened that we lost some data on our premises, and as such we're working around the clock to recover that, and we did some few time just to finalize the nitty-gritties. But through the office of the minister, you'll be informed in due course what will happen. But everything as far as we are concerned in finance, as soon as the data is fully fleshed so that we can provide credible financial statements. We don't want to comply just for the sake of complying. We have invoked subsection 5 of section 40 of the PFMA to inform both the minister, National Treasury, and AGSA of such a delay. But for now, I will say that we'll be informed in due course, probably the end of this month, when we will be ready. But we are, as soon as the data becomes available, we are ready to provide for such, because since I came by, we were able to get all the information and all the reconciliations as far as finance is concerned. I think I've answered all questions as far as finance is concerned. And I'll refer it back to the acting CEO. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, acting CFO. Can I invite Deputy Minister?
Chairperson.
Yes.
Chairperson, may I ask for your indulgence? I'm not sure if perhaps we should proceed. There was a question for the acting GM operations as well as the CIO on the modernization initiatives that are currently in place. I'm not sure if we should pause here or wait for the DM to comment first, Chair, through you.
No. Invite them before the DM and the minister.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Can I ask acting GM Ops to talk to the issue of the polycarbonate paper that has been raised by honorable members, as well as what work has been done to keep the strategic project alive on the e-passport series, and the CIO to talk about the modernization initiatives that are in place. I think those are the two that I realize haven't been responded to. Thanks, Chairperson. Acting GM Ops.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members, honorable Minister and honorable Deputy Minister. In response to the questions raised as indicated by Acting CEO just now, I'll probably first start with the one that talks to professional services, which the Acting CFO referred to myself as well. There generally it is all the service and maintenance for the running of the machinery, specifically issues of software upgrade, and where we then interact with all the international service providers that we have service and maintenance agreements with to make sure that there is uptime on our machinery when we produce. All of those go into professional services because they are specific to those kind of skills, and you can obviously only source them from those specific service provider under the umbrella of service and maintenance. We'll then move to the e-passport series, which is basically the paper that we use to produce our passports, the pages of the passports. Yes, indeed, as indicated by Acting CEO, contract ended in 2019 July, so we have continued to implement this project. Where we are with it, we first had to develop the specifications, which is obviously something that takes its time. But we are now at a stage where we have issued the tender. It's something that was done last month. So we are basically in the middle of the procurement process. Everything is going okay. We are able to source paper for our current needs, so we are well covered, but the process is in progress to procure as indicated. We are also, I think this was also mentioned by our Acting CEO, we're also in the process of the design of the security, printed security features, which is actually not the base paper in this regard, but goes on to the base paper. That we started with SSA, State Security Agency, last year. It's ongoing, and it will, or rather can come in at any time once you have the base paper, whether you have the current one or the future one, it doesn't really matter. So it is all forming part of one project, and it is in progress. Polycarbonate, of course, some comments were made by Acting CEO. I think I need to just add a few to perhaps further clarify. This has been a project that has been included as part of our strategic plans, and not so much of it being maybe a target, but it's been there. And it's purely born out of strengthening our strategy to grow into Africa. Generally, all the security printers will utilize or rather will have upstream production of the key raw materials, whether it's paper or it's polycarbonate or the polycarbonate substrate, so that it's easier to penetrate the market. You can actually get advantages in terms of your prices. You also can respond quickly. So it was born out of that. So you'll understand you need to make movements into the project of getting these customers before you can actually go into these massive investment, capital investments. However, we did start with it, as indicated. We engaged CSIR in 2019 because we needed to understand two things: whether we have the skills to run such a production line, one, two, whether there is enough market to pay it back quickly. And we then engaged with CSIR from that point. I think last year in 2020, they came with a very good document that gave us an indication of actually how this should be approached, and more so as a way of refocusing our business, because we also have to look at the remaining life of the products, our product portfolio, and whether that still makes sense. I think where then we also got in a slight redirection is moving forward, we cannot procure directly from CSIR without going through a competitive tendering process. So which is why in our plans is to complete this techno-economic study in this financial year 2021-2022 through a tender process, and it is in our procurement plan. So it's something that's going to happen this year. And then the physical erection of the plant, or rather, building of the components and putting up the plant will happen in the next financial year, 2022 to 23. So it is in progress in terms of our plans. And it is something, maybe to highlight, something that has got to be linked with the strategy of growing into Africa. So the more we get those customers and we sign agreements, and so the more it should move. So it doesn't move fast and, quite ahead of acquiring the customers. I think that it should be enough. Esteemed members and colleagues, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ngubani. Acting CEO.
The CIO chairperson would be our last person to comment. Thank you. Through you.
Mr. Pleni.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. Afternoon, Chairperson, and as well afternoon to our Honorable Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. My question, Chair, is going to be responding on the issue around modernization. Yes, this is a process already that we have started. As the acting CEO has said, our main focus obviously is our biggest customer, which is definitely Home Affairs. From that side, we have already started upgrading the so-called the passport system, which enable Home Affairs to be able to have a monitoring of the production environment in terms of the real time and be able to trace the document as they produce in certain times, and as well as monitoring of specific applications. So that process has already been completed. Going forward for Home Affairs as well, we are in the process already of upgrading the ID card system. That process is already underway. We are expecting to finish it as in the following month. That will be seen now our passport environment in terms of the back-end infrastructure being upgraded. We have proposal in place, so we'll start to execute that project. On the other side of the GPW business, we have chaired the legacy systems, which as GPW we have resolved now to move to the new ERP system. We have already started the issue of the RFI going out to the industry, just to indicate as well as verify if there are companies that are capable of developing systems that will be able to meet GPW environment. That process has been completed. The business case has been approved. Now that process now is under the procurement through CETA. So we are now going to see the whole revamp of GPW business systems moving to the new ERP system. And the main reason, Chair, is that the current systems which now are legacy, we have a biggest issue in terms of the data integration, which is actually the core of the ERP system, so that we can be able to benefit on issues around the 4IR, the IoT, and so forth. Key achievements so far, Chair, we have already implemented a couple of initiatives. One is the digital signature. By now, GPW are able to sign all our electronic documents online. Secondly, Chair, we also implemented an online leave form. Our staff is able to apply on leave online. However, we still allow for a hybrid solution for those who still prefer to actually complete the leave manually, but we do have got the system in place in terms of electronic online leave. The other issue, Chair, that we have already implemented from HR side, it's a time and attendance. We are well aware of the issue around the COVID in terms of using biometric. So we are actually using visual assigning in terms of the time and attendance. The system is in place and is fully operational. Currently, Chair, we are working closely with CETA, which we appreciate that, on the issue of finalization, what we call it, electronic document delivery. What this necessarily means, Chair, is that from next month, we'll be able to receive our pay slip electronically in our phones. We are at a stage of just finalizing a contract between GPW and CETA. We should see this system as well being implemented soon. The other initiatives which are underway, Chair, is PMDS electronic system, which we are working closely with HR. We already received some of the proposals, so this is a matter as well that will go now on the procurement. Secondly, the other initiative that we are looking, Chair, is the recruitment process. We are working already with DPSA. DPSA has got already a prototype of the system that they are using, so we are collaborating on that one. So we should see before the end of the financial year, right, having a process that is electronic for GPW to be able to recruit using an electronic system. Obviously, Chair, these are the initiatives that as a modernization team, we are looking at implementing, obviously, as well looking at the industry research using Gartner in terms of the new technologies that are available in the market, especially in the production industry. So just to summarize, Chair, those are the key initiatives that we have in place, and those are the key targets in terms of the modernization that we have already achieved. Thanks very much, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Pleni. CEO, we are done with your delegation.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Those were our last comments. Thank you.
Thank you, DM. You'll pardon me. I could have called you when we're also making comments on the IEC. It was not deliberate. I relied on your notes of comfort in our interaction during the meeting. You are invited, DM, to make comment, and therefore we'll invite the minister. DM.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think I was indeed covered on issues of the IEC. There's just one issue on this one, because I think the team and management, they've really dealt with the majority of issues. Our cash and cash equivalences are very important, because they are the ones who have been able to really buffer the impact that we have had as a result of COVID. And I just want to assure the committee that despite the going down of revenue resulting into reduced profitability of the entity, however, all those problems are then buffered from the profits that we had made in the previous years, which will really be able to carry us forward. And all of that, I think, should really applaud the team in terms of how they have been able to manage the finances of GPW. And also, it is the very same amount that will really help us, as the CEO was saying, that they will help us when we come to launch some of the projects in Africa. Because for us to be able to do that, we'll need quite a good capital investments. There are areas where we need to move a bit faster, where we have been delayed by other departments like Public Works in terms of our infrastructure projects. But all in all, we look very good in terms of our financial soundness and our financial discipline. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, DM, for your contribution and comments. Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm sure the presentation took a little bit of long time, so I'll try to be as short as possible. Chairperson, the first thing is your comment about the fact that we must account for these 18 positions. You are definitely right, Chairperson. It is very, very frustrating, and I'm extremely uncomfortable with it. There are 3 key positions in government printing that has been acting for a very long time. The CEO position, if I'm not mistaken, the last CEO of Government Printing Works left sometimes in 2016, and they've been acting and they've been living under circumstances that are not very clear. At some stage, I tried to do the exit interviews without actually getting what the problem is. But be that as it may, you are aware that we did last year interview for the position of CEO. And after finishing, when we were supposed to finalize the matter, we then learned that there is a new rule about getting a presidential minute before you advertise any post of a CEO or a DG in a government department. At that time, we thought it was applying to DGs only, but we understood that it also affects CEOs because government printing works is not really an SOE, but it's an entity, a 3D government entity. So we had to reapply again, re-advertise again, and I'm happy to mention that we've completed that job. We've submitted everything to the Department of Public Service and Administration. We are patiently waiting for them to submit to Cabinet, for the Cabinet to make the appointment of the position of CEO. The second one is the position of General Manager Production, because that is the core of the department. We have also finished interviewing. We have submitted to the Department of Public Service and Administration. Again, we are patiently waiting for them to send it to Cabinet because it's also a position that must be appointed by Cabinet. The most distressing one is the position of CFO. You will remember that we actually reported to this committee many times, where we even have to go to Treasury to get people seconded for 6 months, then Treasury will second them. After 3 months, withdraw them. At some stage, we even asked the CFO in Home Affairs itself to do a double job and do both Home Affairs and government printing works. He did that for a very short time and he couldn't cope, he pulled out. So we have been having these problems. Now, the most distressing thing, Chairperson, we have actually interviewed for a CFO a year ago, but the Department of Public Service and Administration very inconveniently will return the documents and say, do this and that. We are not happy with your job evaluation, or come back and say the job evaluation you are using for this post is very old, start afresh to evaluate. They've been doing that many times, and I don't understand. Why don't they return and demand things at the same time? They demand one thing at a time and you respond, they wait for a few months, demand something else. And that's why we've been here, and it's very worrying. And I'm thinking about approaching the minister and say, this cannot go on because this entity called Government Printing Works is actually suffering. You will realize today that these are the 3 key positions that have just presented to you, Chairperson. The second thing I want to mention, I'm really praying that this post will be filled within the next few coming weeks because we have done our job, we're just waiting. The other thing is this issue of building. Chairperson, I'm happy to announce that last night I phoned Dr. Ramukopa because you are aware that this money has been lying fallow in the coffers of government printing works, waiting for public works. They've been given the go-ahead about 4 years ago to try and help put up this master plan for a new building for government printing works, and they've been delaying. So we have asked public works to allow us to move away to somebody else, and they've been resisting. I'm happy to announce that last night, Dr. Ramukopa informed me that public works has at last agreed in principle that we can move over to DPSA. DPSA will issue a contract and will monitor the whole building, and I believe we'll finish within a very short space of time because DPSA doesn't work like public works. One of the things, it's not going to issue a tender. They've got already got a permanent groups, the panel of contractors, they just choose one. So there's not going to be a period of advertising and waiting. Immediately they sign, I understand that letter is on the way to this acting CEO of Government Printing Works. Immediately it arrives there, they'll just choose a contractor, and I believe works will start in the next few weeks. The issue about moving into the continent, Chairperson, let us remember that by and large, countries on the African continent don't do trade with each other. That's why recently we were excited when the concept of AFC FTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement was signed in order for African countries to trade with each other. And this issue of moving government printing works into the rest of the continent is in that spirit of trading with each other. Chairperson, the last issue about lost data, this to me is a very, very serious matter. Suffice it to say, I'm going to bring it to the committee because we have just learned that that is not something that happened perhaps by accident. There is something that was going on, but allow me not to go into it today because I don't want to come with conspiracy theories. I want to come with facts, and I will tell you what we are doing about this because it's delaying sending documents over to the Auditor General to start auditing government printing works. Chairperson, let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, the acting CEO, and your collective team at Government Printing Works, and members who all of us contributed to the presentation. Appreciation on the progress work that you are carrying, the team, Department of Home Affairs and the Government Printing Works. We do appreciate your work as a strategic entity for our government, which generate revenue to also service some of the in the fiscals of, and also you are a step ahead to interact with the member states in the SADC. I mean, that is quite an encouraging progress, and also the financial stability that has been outlined and the progress in terms of your governance work. We also have observed the challenges that are arising from the presentation that you have made and the responses thereof. And critical to the last matter that the minister has just indicated, the loss of data. You know that we have conducted an oversight at the department. There were various issues that have arisen, and since then, there are some of the matters that have been dealt with by the executive led by the acting CEO. We do appreciate that work, Minister. We are concerned about the continuous acting of positions which will in future contribute negatively to the stability of the institution. And I think it's a matter that we take direct to you, Minister, to, as a collective at the executive level with your counterpart. You may need to not to come here to us to raise the matter. We are directing you and requesting you, Minister, to interface with your colleague so that this matter of appointment of a key strategic position in the government printing works are affirmed, and so that they continue doing work. We'll continuously monitor the implementation of the issues that they've raised on the APP, the targets that the institution have set, and as the committee will pay more attention to the work of the government printing works. They still have to come back on some of the issues that are being raised here. And I think some of the questions that you have not adequately responded to it, acting as CEO, you need to put them on paper. I know that some of the issues that were raised by members that I've noted and which you have not adequately responded. And I think it would be important that our secretary of the committee, we have requested him to pay attention to some of the questions that are not responded and filled to you. In our next interval with government printing works, we'll do a request that update from the minister. I want to thank members of the committee who have contributed on this item. We're stepping off the government printing works. We're going to the next item. The next item, Minister, I'm advised by the committee secretary that the presentation that you're supposed to do, or the report on the letter we received on the letter that was addressed to Chairperson Advocate Bongo by Nehau and PSA, that report has not been circulated to members. And we know that you have requested you to prepare that report because we don't want to suppress views that are raised by stakeholders in your institution. That's why we take interest. That's why the issue of a complaints box was raised by an honorable member. And those are the issues that, some of the issues that we must take interest on as the community. I want to caution that it is only at the particular point that we have interfaced with a matter, we can then make our opinion. I'm cautioning this acting CEO that a matter that has been, I learned she said that there are issues that people are raising opportunistically or so and so. I'm raising that point that we need to be balanced when we deal with the issues that are arising from the member. So because the report has not been raised, it's circulated on the issue of the NEHAU and the PSA minister, we know that we have requested you to prepare the report we presented. I'm not sure how we're going to deal with this matter, or either we defer it to a next meeting, but I want to get guidance from members so that we take a collective approach. But this matter, we need a response to the minister on this issue raised by the NEHAU and the PSA. Let me invite members just to conference around this matter. Or you want to enter the minister first? Yes, Minister.
Yes, sorry, Chairperson, my apologies. Chairperson, I was not really aware that I need to present any report. I thought I was going to ask questions because those letters we received are allegations, and I've been having the answers here with me. Even now, I'm having them. I was not aware that I need to circulate the answers to members. I thought I was just going to answer questions of these allegations on this letter, and I'm ready to do that even now. But if members feel that I must put them in writing and circulate to them before responding to them, that is also fine with me. But I just want to inform you that I've got answers to all those allegations that have been made. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that point, Minister, we do appreciate that. And I think you're correct that you're prepared to respond to that. Our records, I think, is that because they've written to us those allegations, what you want to respond to the allegations to members, at least there must have been circulation and members must peruse the responses so that our discussions are informed on the perusal of the document. But let me get members to assist me so that we have, you know that we're supposed to have ended the meeting at 12, but members to guide me on this process. Can I invite Honorable Rose, Honorable Pillay, Honorable Tito, Honorable Molekwa, Honorable Mqini, Veteran Lokota, and Honorable Mutise. If I've left, and Honorable Khwase, yeah, if she's back for some. Honorable Rose.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I agree. It would be good to get the written responses and then have a session based on that, as opposed to going through the process ad hoc, shooting from the hip. So I support deferring the report to the earliest next opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Tito.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chair, for my side, I'm covered. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Molekwa.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think I agree with honorable members that we should defer the letter to the next meeting once we have a consolidated report. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Pillay.
Thank you, Chair. I support that it be deferred so that we could have a proper report. Thank you.
Honorable Mqini.
No, thank you very much, Chair, on that the guidance is always like cool-headed. It's fine. Let us defer it. But now we need to put a date when, because I'm sorry to say that as we're giving input, I've been getting concerns with people purporting they're coming from GPW. So I will appeal to the leadership of GPW to be extremely honest. If there are issues at GPW, we want to assist. And the only way we can assist is when you're not hiding things and tell us what is happening. I just got a very disturbing thing. When I was talking, I just got a thing. So let us get a proper report, not hiding anything, because we'll be told what is happening. We don't want to, to come with some programs of action which are unnecessary. Let the leadership, as they've been presenting, I mean, we did congratulate them on their performance and what they are doing. Now, there is a lot of staff unhappiness that has been alleged there. We want to get that concise report, what is happening, reason why it's happening, and be honest so that we are able to put systems in place, because I'm hearing, Chair, that there's a looming strike next week. They are waiting for that. So we want those things, so to be put another report. Can we get a thing is indication, my chairperson, when are we going to have that meeting so that we can address this issue? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mqini. Honorable Veteran Lokuta. Veteran Lokuta. Honorable Lokwase.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think there's a consensus around how the issue must be approached. I agree with the latter speakers. Thank you.
Honorable Modise.
Thank you so much, Chair. I also concur that we should defer this matter to the next possible near soonest date. And in the meantime, we should be finished with the report so that we peruse. Thank you so much, Chair.
Can I check Veteran Lokuta if he's still available?
Chair, I'm in support of the motion before the House. Thanks.
Thank you. Members, we're going to, the Minister is ready to report as we have noted by when the meeting is still on, the report has not been circulated. And I think that's the principal approach of dealing with the issues. We are going to, Mr. Matonsi will get a report from the minister and be circulated to members. And will request Mr. Matonsi to, by possible next week, if this matter must be scheduled, perhaps on Friday. Let's just check our time allocated schedule, Mr. Matonsi, and guide the meeting. This letter has been, the Chair, Honorable Bongo, has indicated that it has been sent to him some time ago, last week, sorry, and to the minister. And we need to deal with this matter so that we move out of and assist government printing works. Deputy Minister, can I get your comments? Then we close the matter. DM.
Yeah, I really think it's fine, Chair, that we deal with issues like that. Yeah, thanks. As members have suggested, thanks.
Minister.
Yeah, Chairperson, I want this to be as soon as possible. You see, yeah, what Honorable Tswaku is saying is exactly what is disturbing us. Type of statements used to members who
on the matter. Let me invite Mr. Matonsi if there's any announcement.
Oh, okay. No, Chairperson, thank you so much. For Tuesday next week, we are going to have 4 stakeholders: Home Affairs, South African Human Rights Commission, City of Cape Town, and UNHCR to brief us on the issue of the refugees here in Cape Town. So that is the main agenda, but we also have to consider the budget vote report and finalize it if possible. Then the other issue was the issue of queries that members wanted to be updated by the department, queries that members have sent to the department. So those were the main issues. But I would also suggest that if we were to deal with this issue on Tuesday, so it means we can start the meeting at 9 o'clock and then we finish at 1 o'clock instead of finishing at 12 o'clock. So in other words, from 12 o'clock, we can deal with this issue of the allegations until 1 o'clock. Then the rest of the matters, then we'll deal with them until 12 o'clock.
Okay. No, thanks very much, Mr. Matonsi. Let's look at that one. Then you'll formally communicate with members and Department of Home Affairs and the government printing works on how we're going to deal with the agenda. But in principle, I think all of us will agree on how we must process the agenda. Thanks, honorable members, for your contribution and attention to the detail presented. Thanks, Minister and DM, the DG and your team, acting CEO and your team at Government Printing Works, our staff. Thanks very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Chairperson, thank you very much. We are really looking forward to the next one on engagement on this last matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
The minister is very inspired about this topic.
I am honorable member because I know what is going on.
Yeah.
Because you being disturbed by this notice is something that should not be happening. I am really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Joshua.